You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hey everybody, Philly Chris coming at you live here from Independence Hall. In just a few moments, I'm going to smash through those windows over there and rescue the Liberty Bell from Philadelphia. However, before I do that, I want to let you know we have a great show lined up for you tonight. Marlene Downing's coming back on the program. She's got a really big update for us. And if Mike can bail me out in time to get back to the show, I also have a big announcement. And in this situation, it is going to be a big announcement. So tune in tonight, 7 o'clock live, YouTube. Be there or be square. Peace and love, and you know what time it is.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinTheMorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris? Philly Chris. I forgot to bail him out. What's it called, Russ, the producer?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
How about you, Liberty?
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
Tell them what it's called, Marlene Downing.
MikeGinTheMorning.com.
So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who'll listen to check us out at MikeGinTheMorning.com. You can find out what ruckus Mike G and Philly Chris are up to these days. You can check out all our videos with all of our special guests, MikeGinTheMorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams, bringing you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got a phenomenal program called The Connected Faith with friend of the program, Rick Crump, preaching value, service, and order weekdays at 11 a.m. We've got the one and only Dan the Man Bongino coming at you weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. And finally, the headliner, we've got Ben Shapiro bringing you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we want to welcome him to the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles, bringing you the Michael Knowles Show, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We have a very, very special guest joining us once again. I think it's safe to say you're at this point a friend of the program. Is that so, Marlene Downing?
I would actually call myself family. Like, you guys are my brothers. So let's just say brother from another mother. Yes.
That works for us as well. Family of the program, Marlene Downey. She's got some very special news for us. You may know Marlene Downey as the former director of the Hope Pregnancy Center in Philadelphia. There's Philly Chris. Somebody else bailed. Did Marlene Downing bail you out? Is that
Marlene to the rescue. That's why she's our sister from another mother.
She actually just got out of the police station. That's why she had to bail you out.
She did. Thank you for your help, Marlene. I do appreciate it.
It's always my pleasure.
I couldn't get a hold of
for associating with a couple of knuckleheads like ourselves.
Exactly right.
But as usual, Marlene is doing some great work. Philly Chris had the pleasure to attend one of the events last year one of the pro-life events. I don't know that you've been on the program after that. Were you, Marlene?
I have not.
Okay. So before we talk about our special announcement about your new position and we start to promote this event that's coming up, that's going to be a very, very big deal, why don't we talk a little bit about that event? Because we have the opportunity for you to be here. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what happened at that event and how they let Philly Chris through the door?
Absolutely. So, boy, that was a while ago. Remember, I'm trying to remember our speaker. Chris, tell me the speaker. It was Miss O'Neill, correct?
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
right.
Yeah, that's right. And she was
Yeah.
there with her book and signing her book.
Right. And
Yep.
so she was actually there as the speaker. She did a phenomenal job. My goodness, just her story about how her life has changed. You know, just thinking of how important it is, I guess, to understand that when you have money, you know, it's kind of harder. It's harder to get get involved with spiritual wise, like, you know, that money can kind of be a distraction for you. But for her, even though she went through what she went through, she just really made it through, and now she's working on the life side, so that's great. But that program, or that conference, not conference, but banquet, was amazing.
It was really nice. Yeah, thanks again for having us. Yeah.
one of my last hoorahs with the Hope Pregnancy Center. Actually, I knew that I was leaving prior to that. I did not know exactly when, so I wasn't at liberty to say, you know, anything until then. So I had to kind of keep my mouth shut. But so basically, you know, I knew that I was going to leave at that point. So yes, so it was the last point of me being there.
Yeah.
So before we get into the big announcement about your new position and everything like that, let's talk a little bit about this event that is upcoming. As I understand, you're currently seated on the board of directors for Pro-Life Union of Greater Philadelphia. Is that correct? Do I have the title correct as far as that goes?
On the board, I've been on that board for about 3 years, I believe, maybe 2.5 years, approximately. But everybody on the board is amazing. Tom Stevens heads it off. And yes, we are having a March for Life. We did it last year. It was about 1,500 people in attendance last year. And it was very powerful because we started at St. Peter and Paul Basilica. And then we had like a prayer service on the lawn for people that weren't Catholic. And then we actually moved and marched up into to the enemy's courts, which was 777 Apple Tree, which is the abortion clinic.
You said 666 Apple Tree,
right?
No, I'm sorry.
But there were thousands of people just out there in front of the abortion, praying for the volunteers, praying for, you know, the change of hearts. And it was just the most powerful thing ever. So from there, we went to the Independence Mall and, you know, we finished there. But same thing is going to happen this year. We're expecting a little bit more because we have some even more powerful, not more powerful speakers, but we have some amazing people that are coming. Kristen Hawkins, Tony McFadden, just to name a few people. Tony McFadden actually spoke at the March for Life this year. I'm not sure if you guys were able to see it, the March for Life in DC, but she did an amazing job there. So we're looking forward to this year and looking forward to having people come out in droves and just supporting life. And it doesn't matter what walk you come from. We just want everybody there to witness just the power behind it.
Tom Stevens was on our program to promote an event a couple of years ago, so I'm glad to hear that name again. When you went out there and you folks were just praying outside the facilities, did anybody give you any sort of trouble? Anybody yell at you, say nasty things, throw tomatoes at you, or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so what I mentioned to you guys before is that, you know, that's what I do. I go out and I pray in front of abortion clinics all the time. So it's just something that we're used to.
Gotcha.
That we're coming before we come, which is the oddest thing, you know, because they're prepared and they're ready to heckle us. And sometimes they just sit there and listen and, you know, kind of talk amongst themselves. but yeah, we're so used to that. But when there are so many numbers, like I think last year, and I have video footage of this, I think it was a little bit overwhelming for them. So they kind of, they didn't really have much to say last year. It was just they were kind of looking around at how many people were there. I think they were a little shook that it was 1,500 people in one alley, almost 1,500 people in an alley, just praying and.
That's awesome. And there'll be more this year, it seems. And I hope that all of our audience members, all of our listeners will show up and show support. You said that you do it all the time, but I've got to imagine the dynamics got to be a little bit different on a day when you have this planned event that these pro-abortion people know about. They know that the loony pro-life people are going to be showing up in droves.
Yeah.
I have to imagine the response is going to be a little bit different than a regular Tuesday where Marlene Downing's out there praying for people. Is that true?
They were not, I don't think they were prepared for as I said, the amount. They did have a small group, and it's right before we hit that turn where we turned into the alleyway near Arch Street, on 8th near Arch. There were 7 people that stood in a line. Like,
wow.
But they were just, they were protesting, counter protesting, but there were only 7 of them, and there were thousands of us. So, it's kind of like God's army, just the representation of God's army there. Like, the victory is ours. So I think that was amazing. Like, it was just an amazing, and I was the one that was saying like the prayer, and everyone else was in agreement that I had like a little bullhorn,
Mm-hmm.
and Live Action was there. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but Live Action is a very large group of Lila Rose. Are you familiar with Lila Rose? She's an activist, but she's very well known. But her group was out there filming us that day, and it was powerful. I think about 34,000 people saw us.
Oh wow, that's good. Awesome.
What do they even say when you have an event like that where people are showing up to pray? And you said they had 7 of them, so I imagine that everybody just sort of walked around those 7. It's not like it really got confrontational. But what did they even say? Like, oh, don't you dare pray for them. What's wrong with you? What are they going to say? How dare you?
Yeah, what are their talking points, Marlene?
Yeah, I mean, well, let me just say this: we come in love. We come in love. So, with us, it's never about us going back and forth with them. Now, there are some times that I've seen it, and it's just not good. I don't like to see it. I think I shut it down one time. I'm like, you guys just don't have to do that. But, and then the crazy part about it is when I shut it down, the manager of 777 said, Marlene, we're okay. What do you say? Like, because they know people by name that have been out there. But no, we come in love. But when it's that many people, they don't say much of anything. It's just kind of like scours on their face, and they're talking amongst one another. And I think that, just think about when an enemy enters your territory, or they see us as enemies. So we're entering their territory. So it has to be some sort of frustration on their end of, look at these people, they're coming out here, but it's not, it's not anything. And you could view it, people can view it how they want, but we view it as it's time for this to stop. At some point we have to take a stand, and this is the way that we're able to do it with our free speech amendment.
Yeah. Does it to a certain degree take away their weapons, so to speak, when you show up voluntarily as concerned citizens in love, as you said? If you're not going over there and shouting at people that they're X, Y, and Z bad names that I can't say in the air, and they're going to hell and stuff like that, if you're not doing stuff like that, and then the same time, you're not the government there to tell them you can or cannot do something. You're simply concerned citizens who believe in something and genuinely want what's best for these human beings. You're telling them that. You're telling them you're praying for them. Does it somewhat, de-weaponize, take away any power that they have at that point? Because what can they say? I made the joke that they said, how dare you pray? But what could they legitimately say aside from just talk amongst themselves and be bitter about it because they just don't like pro-life people in general? But there's nothing legitimate to attack you on there, is there?
Well, if you think about it, nothing is legitimate about what they're doing, so it's very easy for them to come up with anything. To say, like I was out there one time and I had a shawl. I think I left work and I was so cold that I just threw on like a shawl that didn't match. And the manager of that place was just like, Marlene, it's something not right with you. Like, what do you have on? And they talk about your shoes and they talk about, so it's a little thing to kind of like pick, just to get you out of that mode of prayer and out of that mode of like fighting and spiritually, just to come on their level. It happens. Like sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, like why are they like this? But you have to, like, what I try to do is try to see their pain, because I know that there is a lot. And a lot of them out there are dealing with a lot of rejection, and they just want to be a part of something, and this is what they find solace in. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a great thing that you folks are doing. And it's almost hard to fathom what their problem is with you folks in general when you're out there doing something that's so nice and so good natured and comes from such a place of love. It's understandable if, not that I agree with them, but I think it's understandable if they have animosity towards people who are pushing a legislative agenda that would put them out of business, right? Let's call it what it is, regardless of how they feel ideologically. And from the 1,000-foot view, it would be putting them out of business. You can sort of understand where somebody could have animosity towards you in that sort of a situation, or if you are the government, or if you're being abusive towards people or being aggressive towards people. But when you're just out there praying for somebody, it's sort of difficult to understand why they would even have a problem with that.
Well, Mike, it's been said that when we're out there praying, because there's something spiritual going on in those realms, they said that they're like when people come, they just keep going, or their numbers go down, where they might see 20 people a day, maybe they might see 8 that day, and they know it's because we're out there. So we don't actually see the impact. We might not see the person turn around, but they see it. So that's why they get upset.
Wow. So, and why are they having numbers go down? Is because people are realizing that there is a different way to go about this?
Well, they don't want to do it in the first place. So think about, you being on edge, and then you saying, okay, this is something I have to do, but you don't want to do, like, your everything inside of you is fighting against it. And then you go and then you see someone out there that reminds you of how you're feeling. Instead of someone that's agreeing with you with how you shouldn't be feeling, or with how you don't feel. It's almost like when they go into the abortion clinics, the abortion representatives, they will convince them that they need to do this because they need to do this to continue on. And that's not true.
They're closing the sale, right? They're in there. They're closing a sale is what it sounds like.
I think you were talking about some of their tactics last time, weren't you?
Yeah. It's serious tactics behind it, so that's what we're dealing with. It's really, really sad that these things are happening, but it's the reality of the matter, and that's why we can't turn our backs on it. And then when we have things like this, the March for Life, we must stand with it, and participate, because that's the right thing to do.
Do you think that these women who show up and they really don't want to do it in the first place, and they see this alternative, and they realize they don't want to do it and they don't have to, and there are people that think like them, do you think that prior to that point, they're exposed to a lot of points of view, not even necessarily inside of the abortion clinic where you got the salesperson trying to close the sale, but people who are maybe their friends and their family members who are all on board with following through with the abortion, telling them this is the way to go, pushing them in that direction. And maybe there are fewer and fewer people who are willing to, speak out on the pro-life side and tell the person, hey, you should probably go through with this. There's another way. There are a bunch of different options other than, taking a life here.
Which is why when we have a Pat Stanton that goes out there every Saturday, I don't know if you guys know him, but he's like a major sidewalk servant for 40 Days for Life. With his sign that says, what do you need? If you need anything, we're here for you, and mean it. When they turn around and see this sign and know that they have help, it changes their thoughts, and some people do come and ask us for help, the pro-life union, but they some people just don't believe it. They don't really believe that there's help until they actually try us for themselves. There's so many resources out there.
Do you find that when people come to you and they have this conversation, they'll tell you, hey, my parents or my friends or my family all told me that I should follow through with the abortion? They were all on that side. You see a lot of cases like that?
All the time. That's why we know in the pregnancy center, when I worked there, we would always count someone as abortion vulnerable, even if they said that they were going to have their baby when they left. If they weren't married and they weren't, in a very stable situation, we knew that there is so much of a possibility that they could have an abortion because of the influence that they have on the outside. Against inside of the center, when they're speaking to a counselor, it's so much of a truth that they are ready to have their child, and then when they turn around, there's so much coming against them. So I think every child is a miracle, and there's a fight for children to be born these days. Really.
I have a question for you, Marlene, if you don't mind. One of the things that I have thought about and I've heard about with abortions too, and it seems like they might downplay this, but I don't know if this is true or not, but the potential side effects, medical side effects and complications from having an abortion. So I think sometimes, the women who are going in for these procedures think it's just really cut and dry and there's no potential risk to themselves. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So there are women, actually a few women that I know that are not able to have kids. They're not able to have any children, and they've regretted every day of their life, doing what they did, because they now have to face the fact that they don't have any. But it's really sad. Like, we have to get help for them as well, because we don't want to leave them there, and that's the thing. Like, that's the reason why it's important to talk about these things, because when someone is inside of themselves and not really, mentioning to other people that this is why I can't have a child, and they're living with guilt and regret, just imagine what fight is within them.
Sure.
When someone can actually let them know, there's help for you and there's healing for you, through post-abortive places like Deeper Still, which is Southeastern post-abortive counseling. They do retreats. And then also Rachel's Vineyard, if you're Catholic, they actually help with post-abortive, and they do retreats. And the retreats are just so amazing. I've gone through them, where you can get healing, and it's not just a general healing. It's like the deepest part of your soul that they touch. So don't live with this regret. You don't have to. God has come to cover all of our sins. And I'm living proof of that. But, if we don't talk about it, people are just stuck with that. Nobody wants to talk about abortion, but there's so many people suffering.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So, Marlene, we've got a couple of comments. People love you, Marlene. You know that? You're very, very popular. What do we got here? We've got Len Larson. Give him a hey now, Philly Chris.
Hey now, Lenny Larson or Len Larson. Hey now.
We got CB, Rita, and Scott, the regulars. Give them a hey now.
Hey now to all our regulars. Thanks for tuning in.
Randy, the regular. Give him a hey now.
Randy, hey now.
Got somebody new in the comments. TSHEWB says, hi, Mike. Love the evening concept. I don't know how you pronounce that one.
Yeah, I
Philly
was just
Chris.
trying
How
to
do you pronounce that?
I think
It
it's one
sounds
of the
like what- it sounds like a
extraterrestrials
Jo-
we've been talking about.
Sounds like a Joe Biden speech, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Give him a hey now.
Hey
Give him a
now to Snuffleupagus. I'm trying to.
Snuffleupagus. And last but not least, Stacks Farmstead with the Miracle Baby. By the name of
Farmstead.
What is the baby's name? What's Miracle Baby's name? Do you know?
Wait.
Hope Stack. Hope.
Oh yeah, Hope.
Give him a hey
Stack.
now. Give him a hey
Hope Stack.
Miracle Baby.
Hope Stack.
Hey
Hey
now.
now to Hope Stack. Coming at you live.
I have another miracle baby.
You have another Miracle Baby.
Yes, her name is Amora. She was just born 3 weeks ago. And she was one of the, I don't know if I spoke about it on the last show, but she was one of the abortion pill reversals that Dr. Ribeiro and I helped save.
Oh, wow.
There was a young lady that came into the center that took the abortion pill, and now she's born. She's healthy, and she's doing really well, and mom is doing well as well.
That is amazing news. We are very, very, very glad to hear that. Give her a hey now, Philly Chris.
Hey now, coming at you live from the Mike G in the Morning Show. Hey now.
Hey now. I love hearing Miracle Baby stories. There's just doesn't get much better than that, does it? I can't believe that. That's incredible.
Well, it's amazing that any.
Do you hear stories like that on a regular basis? Or are there multiple stories like that, or is that just one in a billion, Marlene?
Well, no. People need to know. So people need to know about the abortion pill reversal. So I'll just say the website, abortionpillreversal.com. It's so important now because
should be easy to remember.
They're sending abortion pills through the mail now.
Really?
The FDA approved it.
You probably get a ballot with one of them or something.
but no ammunition. No ammunition.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So these things are really, really dangerous, and we need to be educating people about that, and then also letting them know within 72 hours, if they do take that pill, which we pray that they don't, but if they do take that pill within 72 hours, they have an opportunity, a window of opportunity to save that baby's life. And so far, I've participated in 4 of them, getting 4 babies saved through the abortion pill reversal. And because I have a great friend, Dr. Ribeiro, who's amazing, you guys should have her on the show. She's helped me with that. But abortionpillreversal.com is the number that they would call. They would call these doctors. The doctors would actually get them some progesterone to build the baby up, to make sure that because what happens when they take the first pill.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with the concept of an abortion pill, and I think some of our audience maybe is not familiar. So could you explain?
Absolutely.
What it is?
So what happens is with an abortion pill, they go into the abortion clinic or they have it mailed to them. And the first pill they're supposed to take on the first day. And they're given 4 pills. So the first pill starts to break down the baby, break down the molecular function of the baby. So that's why they have 72 hours, because within that window of time after that, then when they take the other pills, it's already too late. But within if they take the first pill, then they can get progesterone to build the baby back up. But they have to, get to a doctor, and they have to go through like a little process to make sure that everything's fine, that the heartbeat is going, and it's a process, but they would go through the abortion pill reversal to do that. But often, and people don't talk about this, but often, when they do take the pill, they regret it. And this gives them the opportunity when they do have that regret, which happens. I've had people say, I was watching television and my son said something about my baby, and then I said, I know I did something wrong, so I had to call you. So these things happen, but they need to know where to call. And so that's why it's important for us to tell people about it.
What's the fastest way they can get that? Just
Um,
call their doctor, and then they'll usually have local pharmacy real quick, or
Abortionpillreversal.com, Philly
yeah.
Chris.
Well, yeah, I know that,
Yeah,
but yeah.
they can't call their regular doctor because normally their regular doctor won't prescribe.
So that's still the fastest
They
way. That's
won't.
what I
You
was.
said,
That's what I was
hold
wondering.
on, hold
yeah.
on. You
yeah.
said they
That's why I'm
won't?
wondering, because you would think.
Hold on. Did you say that a normal doctor typically won't prescribe that?
Well, I'll say that abortionpillreversal.com is the best way because they're
Okay.
specialized in them. Not to say that they won't, but say they don't get an appointment right away.
But don't they have to mail it to you or something? Mail it to
And,
you? I wonder how they get it to you. I'll look into it.
yeah. So they just call in the prescription and they go pick it up and they'll take.
Okay. That's why I was asking about the time thing. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
I wonder if every doctor is even familiar with this concept. You were saying that abortionpillreversal.com, this is what they do, so they are familiar. I wonder if you just call like a general practitioner, whether they would even be aware of such a thing and know what to prescribe.
They may, but I can say that the last one that we did, she went into the ER because she was actually allergic, but she went into the ER and the ER doctors would not help her with that. So,
Do you know anyone there at the organization personally, Marlene?
for abortion pill reversal,
Yeah.
Ribeiro.
Okay.
Dr. Monique Ribeiro.
Okay.
Is she out of Pennsylvania?
Yes.
That's amazing.
We should call them now. We should call them right now on the air live.
Well, there's a hotline, and they would refer them out to the doctor on call. But they're all amazing, all of them.
Okay.
And this is something different than that stuff that's frequently advertised, Plan B or something like that. This is something
So
different.
Plan B is like a very it's an abortion, basically, I would say. But that's different. Like something that you take right after, something happens. They want to make sure that, and these women are getting Plan B. Prayer service starts at 9:30 on the lawn of St. Peter and Paul Basilica. And then also the march starts at 10:30, and then the rally starts at 12 in Independence Mall.
Everybody needs to be out there. It's 8:30. I'm sorry, you said 8:30 is the Catholic Mass?
Yes.
And then 9:30
is the prayer service on the lawn. So they'll be praying outside of.
Gotcha. Everybody needs to be there. Everybody needs to be there. You said St. Peter's?
Yes, St. Peter and Paul Basilica on 17th and Reese.
There you go.
Nice.
That's exactly where you need to be at the exact time, the exact date. Don't forget it. Write it down.
Yes.
For your friends, family, and Uncle Jerry. So this is going to be very exciting. I hope that these numbers this year blow last year's out of the water. Hopefully there's an awareness out there right now about how important it is that we do this sort of thing. We see the way the world is changing. It doesn't look like it's getting any better, unfortunately. And it seems like whatever is popular is not right. Whatever's right is not popular.
Yeah,
I think that's the best
might
way
be a
to
good way to put it,
right
right?
now.
Yeah.
So, Marlene, I understand you also have another very special announcement for our audience about your new position. Is that true?
Yes. And we're hiring.
Oh.
That's what I want to lead with. Okay. So anyone out there that needs a job, that you will have purpose, you will find purpose in this. Because when I tell you, it's just an amazing thing to do and just so good for the pro-life movement. We pay first of all, let me just tell you who we are. I work for Susan B. Anthony List now. I am the Deputy State Director for them. And
wow, hold on. Before you tell us what you do, bravo, let's give her a round.
Hey now.
This is amazing. This is amazing.
So let me just say the background with that is that, I love, like you guys talk to me, you know how much I loved hope. Like I loved it.
Oh, no question.
God, and I know that everybody doesn't believe and God speaking with them, but I happen to know that God speaks to me. But he was speaking to me and saying it was time. So I knew in July of last year, and I said I was going to wait until after the banquet, but I didn't even know where God had me going. I had no idea. I didn't even have a job in place. I just gave my resignation, and so I trusted him because I believe that his will is what's best for me. And I know that if he told me, and I fasted and I prayed and I was cried and I'm just like, Lord, please, this is not it, let me know. But he's just made it clear. So anyway, right after the banquet was when I had an interview with Susan B. Anthony List. So that's how I know that's where I was supposed to be. But I had no idea how wonderful the transition would be. It was amazing, and they created this position for me. Who, the deputy state director? What is a deputy?
I was going to say we're definitely not worthy. Whatever it is, it sounds pretty impressive. So, and
basically, I'm in training to be.
This will probably be your last appearance on the show, right? You've moved past us now.
It's a fact. So Susan B. Anthony List is just an amazing organization, and their mission is to elect pro-life leaders. And so what they do is they have so many facets to them, but they have a field team that goes out and they knock doors, and that personal experience with the voters and talking to them about the things that are happening, like infanticide, late-term abortion. So here we are. We have people that actually, are pro-choice that will never agree with us of being pro-life, right?
Sure.
But believe that there should be limits to abortion. Whereas, I believe something differently, and this is my personal belief, but I believe that life starts at conception. But there are some people that believe that there should be limits. Now, we have, people in place that just don't have any limits at all, which are, some of these candidates that are out there. I won't name them, but we know who they are. And they believe in birth, abortion up until birth, and they also believe in late-term abortion when babies can feel pain. So that's like the cutoff with a lot of people. So when you meet them at the door and talk to them about, these candidates that are running that do believe that way, they kind of, it's kind of like a deal breaker for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows the right people to get in office. So that's what we do. We hire a lot of young people. Like we'll hire as young as 16 to get out there and to knock doors. And we have, just 5 questions that we ask at the door, but it's just an amazing time to see people, because you never know whose door you're going to knock on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't really experienced like any irate people. I've experienced people that say they don't have time to talk, or they are pro-choice and, just don't really want to talk to you. I haven't experienced anyone that just, was irate. But I have experienced sometimes where I went to the door and there was actually an instance with a lady that, just was so happy to have someone to talk to about what had happened. And we prayed for her at the door. And, just so many instances and stories where people just want to talk, and they want to talk about this. And you never know, like, where people are at until you meet them where they are. And then that gives them the opportunity to think about, hey, maybe I might have been wrong about this. Or, when you start to open up your mind, like if you can open up your mind to the limits, you can open up your mind to, okay, so I'm saying that this is the cutoff, but why is this the cutoff? Like, why wouldn't it be earlier? So then they start to think. So that's what we try to do, and we've been making great waves. 75,000 people so far in Pennsylvania we've reached just by knocking doors.
That's fantastic.
This website is very cool too. I think everybody should go check it out. SBA-list.org, is that correct?
Absolutely.
SBA-list.org. Sort of like the Gun Owners of America for pro-life movement, because they have a lot of similar things. Each politician has a national pro-life scorecard where they give them a rating. And I find it fascinating because as you're scrolling through, they don't. First of all, they don't all line up with the party lines that you might expect, or the typical person would expect of people. You don't see that all the way through. And most of the grades, save a couple of outliers, are either A plus or F. And I think that shows something about this issue, how it's so unique,
Yes, Mike.
right?
Yeah.
You're either A plus or you're F. People are either strongly for it or strongly against it.
Wow.
You got a couple of, like, looks like Joe Manchin got a B, and you get a couple of other outliers there. Lisa Murkowski got a D, and but her name's in red over here, so I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't know that about her without digging deeper into this, without looking at this website. It shows how important it is. Know who you're voting for, the principles that they're standing up for. One that always gets me, Marlene, is Bob Casey, Pennsylvania. He's an F, and his father, Bob Casey Sr., from what I understand, was pretty well known for being an anti-abortion Democrat. And I remember them showing a speech that he gave at one of the pro-life fundraisers I attended. I believe it was the event where Sarah Huckabee Sanders was the keynote speaker in Harrisburg. And they showed a video of Bob Casey Sr. talking about how that Roe v. Wade is like a bone in the throat of America, and we're never going to recover until we get rid of that. And to see his son out there just leading the charge pro-abortion, it's sad. It's very sad. But this is a very, very valuable tool here for people who want to be high information voters, right?
Absolutely. And we all have to realize our role in who's in office. Like we have to realize that if things pretty much go wrong, whose fault is it? We have the power. We have the power to put somebody in office, and we have the power to get them out of office.
It's probably Putin's fault right now. Sorry. Just had to go there.
One way to look at it.
Yeah, right.
I think people should, instead of like turning their back on political issues, because not a lot of people like to they don't like to deal with politics. But instead of turning their back on it, just they need to research, study, and really know what they're doing, because it's so important. It's important to every facet of our life, but so important for life, because that's where it starts.
Is there something to that, though, that this is sort of a unique issue, and that everybody's an A or A plus or an F? That everybody is outstretched to the edges.
Not a lot of in between there, I guess. Yeah.
There's really not a lot of in between, right? You're either okay with killing a baby or you're not. That's what it comes down to.
Right.
And that's there's not a whole lot of room for. I was going to say, you can't really say I'm okay with killing a baby sometimes, although you do hear people say, well, there's the 3 exceptions, what they typically throw out there. Do you get that a lot? Do people ask you the questions about those 3 exceptions, Marlene?
They do. So, of course, the exceptions are incest and rape. And then what's the other one that you're
Life
saying?
of the mother, which, from what I understand, the first time you were on this program, Marlene, we had Dr. Christine Francis, who's the chairperson of the board for pro-life OBGYNs nationally.
Oh, yeah.
And she was a guest on the program, same episode as you, and she was saying that there's really no such thing as an abortion for the life of the mother. She's saying that's absolute medical nonsense. It doesn't exist. And so might as well not even talk about it. But that is the 3rd exception that they typically mention.
Right. I forgot about that. That is so true. And then they can use any old excuse. Especially with the laws that they passed for abortion up until birth. It's just any excuse will do. If they're having mental health issues, or how is that even possible for them to be able to do that.
And that's kind of where we're at now, right? Like you can go pretty late right now, right, Marlene? Like how late is it that you can go? Like,
well,
pretty
New
much,
York,
yeah.
the New York state law is absolutely mortifying, right?
Right.
When they passed and then they lit up the Empire State Building in pink because of it at the end,
Yeah.
like celebrate. Yeah, we get to kill babies till before the
It's-
second that the head comes out. It's like,
crazy.
you got to be kidding me. How does
And
that
then there
make
were
any
those,
logical sense whatsoever?
Not
Yeah.
at all. But they make it make sense.
Well, it's just like they make a lot of the things now in the country make sense.
Right.
You know.
For them it makes sense, but it never makes sense to
Right.
us. It's just conception for it's just conception.
Yeah, and New York is a disgrace, Rusty. You are correct. In the comments there, yes.
And
Hey,
that
now.
is true.
New York
That
is-
is true.
It's
It's a, I don't want to say it's a lost cause, but I heard a statistic that more African American babies are aborted in New York City than born alive.
Yeah, and that's the truth.
yeah, that's just
That's-
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah,
It,
it's
that's
interesting.
heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking.
The Liberty.
I have a question. Yeah, hello.
Hey, Liberty.
I have a question. There was an article on Twitter the other day from a doctor saying that you're going to see an increase in deaths or mortality among women doing like their own abortions if you illegalize it or criminalize it.
That
How
happened
do you,
before in history, right?
Yeah, well, how do you combat that? Like, is it more just getting it to them before any of that happens? Like, how do you combat those?
It's a fear tactic. I mean, it's people that they're not going to do that. I mean, and if they do, then
Right.
it's how many people are going to do that. It's a tactic for fear, and it's always something to like they said with the incest and rape. You can't just take a small percentage and say this might happen, but now you're killing 63
Right.
million babies. Like, is that okay?
Right.
Right.
Marlene, logically, when you're saying, oh well, if you don't let me, then I'm gonna do it myself. And the politicians say, oh well, these people are gonna go ahead and do this, and it's gonna be unsafe if they do it themselves. So we have to provide this legal alternative because it'll be safer. I mean, would that same narrative apply if people came out there and said, I'm going to kill my 1-year-old if you don't, if you make it illegal, I'm just going to kill them myself.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the government says, oh, well, we have to set up these facilities to carefully and safely kill these 1-year-olds so their parents don't do it themselves.
Well, welcome to 2023.
I think it's important though, because you are seeing literally doctors putting opinions out there on this, so it is a talking point.
I mean, when we say doctors, okay, so doctors take an oath, right? When they go into their practice, like they take an oath. So there's just a lot of doctors that aren't practicing morally now. So we can't really,
Yeah, that's very true.
Measuring against doctors, like we're measuring against God. Like what does God say about it? And that's how I look at things. Like you can't really measure scientists or people or anything. Like because right now we've gotten so past everything. Where everybody's been tainted. So now we have to have a standard. And where is that standard coming from if we're not looking to God?
Right. It becomes completely malleable and arbitrary. And we see how culture changes, right?
Right. God
doesn't change, culture changes. And when we have all these culture changes, there's no more compass, is there?
Yeah, we have to get back to that. And I think, that's where we've fallen, is that we've idolized so many different people and so many things, science. And we know that science is real because it comes from God. But we can't idolize the scientists because we know that they're fallible. And,
right, exactly.
We have to get snap out of it, people.
What is wrong with them? We get it's always great to hear from you because you see this stuff up close and personal, and you see all the issues that we're having, and you're out there doing something about it. I know that I'm very thankful for it, yeah, you can just look to all the comments section over here. Our audience members are incredibly grateful that you're doing this sort of thing. But it is such a shame how hard we have to fight just to prevent this sort of thing from going on, because it's absolutely horrifying, isn't it?
It's absolutely horrifying. It really is. And whatever you can do, whether you volunteer at a pregnancy center, whether you help me out with Susan B. Anthony list by going to knock on doors, we'll pay you. We have to pay you. You can't volunteer with that. $15 an hour, and you can email me, and I'll give you my email address if anybody wants to type it in the comments. But it's Marlene, SBA list. Wait, Marlene, hold on. Oh gosh, how did I forget my own email address?
Well, you don't email yourself that often.
I don't email myself.
Is it Marlene at sba-list.org?
No.
No.
Marlene, yes, at sbalistfield.org.
Marlene.
So I don't know why I was thinking about a dot, but it's actually Marlene at sbalistfield.org. So just email me if you're interested in a position. You can make your own hours, but I train you, and
that's really neat.
Love to have you come knock on doors. You have to be pro-life. That's the criteria for the job.
I would hope so, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you could have somebody over there knocking on the door with you. If you do decide to get it, it's not that big of a deal.
right. Yeah.
And Pennsylvania for me. We're in 6 states.
And where you said again, it's Marlene at sbalistfield.org. You have in the comments now. That's great.
Yes.
So
sba-list.org.
Yeah. SBS list.
There's no dash in there, but it's sbalistfield.org.
Yeah. No, I'm saying the website itself.
Oh, they said it's all Trump's fault.
Yeah, I know. I was just laughing at that. I'm sorry.
And then our leader, Marjorie Dannenfelser, she actually was the Trump's advisor for pro-life.
Wow.
He was right up there with him.
That's one thing, he did stand up for that, and that was I thought an interesting example of people who switch sides, because years ago, and he was a self-professed Democrat and was
right,
pro-abortion. And when they asked him about it, why he switched, he said that he had a real life experience where he saw somebody, a family who was thinking of getting an abortion because of a diagnosis of the child would supposedly have, and they went through with the pregnancy, and they have this beautiful child they're so thankful for, and so thankful that they never did it. Those kinds of stories are incredible to hear, though, aren't they?
No, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how many doctors have said abort your child because the child may have this or the child.
I've seen that a bunch of times. Yeah,
and then they come out perfect, or when they come out, even if they're not perfect, like we're none of us are perfect, right?
Right.
But does that mean that we don't deserve love?
Mike's pretty perfect.
No, I was gonna go the opposite. Doctors told my parents, you might want to get rid of this one. This guy is gonna be nothing but trouble. Trust us. Make an exception, Mr. and Mrs. Jeremy. I know.
Your mom immediately regretted her decision.
It's like, I know this goes against everything you stand for, but you want to trust you on this one. It's true, though. I remember I played Little League with a guy who his mother told us the story about how the doctor said he was going to be deformed and mentally retarded and advised that she have an abortion. And she didn't want to do it. She was losing sleep over it. She went and she talked to her pastor about it.
It's crazy.
Prayed about it. And
what a weird
long time, decided to go through with it regardless. And he came out perfectly healthy, neither deformed nor mentally retarded. And like you said, even if, a kid's born with something, people love the kid and they're absolutely thankful that they went through with it and that they had that child in their lives. No?
Yes, it changes. I mean, it changes their life in such a way that they're so grateful that even though there are challenges, it probably built them. It made them a better person. So I know so many people that are like that, and they're beautiful people. you find beauty in everyone because God created them. I just don't understand, where they get their like why they have these standards of you should be this way in order to be a person.
One last thing though, and this really is pretty sickening. So we may have mentioned this in the program before, but it haunts me because I can't get it out of my head. There's a picture posted on social media. There's a birthday cake that said abortion is healthcare. Celebrating. How do you have a cake to celebrate abortion? What actually happens? You think about what actually happens when somebody goes through with an abortion and they celebrate it like that. What is that whole narrative all about? That abortion is healthcare.
Propaganda.
How is killing a third party healthcare? Is there any explanation that you're giving up? Because Marlene, I'd imagine you're very well versed on the other side's talking points and everything like that, because you have to have discussions with people who have heard those and give them a counterpoint to these sorts of things when you're having these conversations with people, don't you?
Yes. So that's a total lie.
I would think so.
Yeah.
But
I'm not a doctor or
it's
anything.
really propaganda, right? I mean, it's truly. Yeah. I mean, that's how I look at it.
But it does stem from something. So what it basically stems from is just a lot of different things. But I know that one in particular in the African American community, there are women that say that they're afraid of death because they're not treated the way that everyone else should be treated. So that they go through hypertension and they have a risk of, infant death. And there's just so many risks involved is what they say. And they scare them in that way. Like I said, it's a scare tactic.
And what percentage of women die during pregnancy?
I don't want to say because I don't know offhand.
Okay.
So I can't speak to that, but we can look it up.
Yeah.
But I do know.
But it's not something that's wild that would knock you out of your chair and be like, oh my goodness, they're all dropping dead from this.
No, absolutely not. But it does need to be looked at. It definitely does need to, have some attention, but it's not a reason to have an abortion. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it'll be any reason, will do. But I've told you that I've been in front of people who said, oh, my baby's going to be born in June. I don't want a Gemini.
Oh, gosh. Really?
Yeah. That is sickening. How much more selfish can people be?
That's
all disturbing. I mean, that's pretty disturbing.
Selfish, but people don't see it that way because we're not looking at life the way that we should look at it.
Well, Marlene, thank you so much for doing what you do. Eddie Moy says, fight on, Marlene. They love you over here, Marlene. Yeah. They love you. We thank you so much for joining us. The Pro-Life Union March is on March 26th.
Don't miss it, guys.
Don't miss it. It is at, you're going to have to help me with the name of the church again.
Yeah, so it's St. Peter and Paul Basilica. And look, I had to rehearse this myself, but 17th and Race is where it's going to start at 8:30 is the Mass. 9:30 is going to be a prayer service on the lawn. And then we're going to start the march at 10:30. And the march goes from 17th and Race on out to Independence Mall. We'll have beautiful speakers. We're going to have Dr. Monique Ribeiro. We're going to have Tony McFadden, Kristen Hawkins, Pete DeMaio, Sisters for Life, Sister Maeve, and PA Family Council, Michael Gear. So there's so many people going to be, I feel like, and we'll have the opening prayer. How can I forget? Herb Luss, the third, he's going to be out there opening in prayer. He's a powerhouse. So I'm excited to have everybody on.
Fantastic.
Yeah, what an amazing lineup. All-star lineup coming to the Pro-Life Union March in Philadelphia, March 26th. Mass starts at 8:30. Prayer starts at 9:30. March starts at 10:30. Everybody better be there or be a mustard-eating knucklehead, right?
That's right. Be
They-
there.
they
Thank
better.
you. Thank you so much. We've got Marlene with us, who is give us your title one more time.
I am the Deputy State Director for Susan B. Anthony List.
Hey, now.
Deputy State Director for the Susan B. Anthony list. She announced it right here on this program. That's where the world heard about it, right? We are very special in that respect. That
Hey, now.
she gave us the honor and pleasure of
Yes.
joining us to announce it to the world. Going to do really great things. Everybody check out sba-list.org. And if you want to get involved, you got to email Marlene over at marlene@sbalistfield.org. Is that correct?
Yes.
There's been so many comments since I typed that into the comment search, the comment section, that I couldn't even scroll up and find it. They're absolutely gangbusters over you, Marlene. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us once again, Marlene. We hope to have you back on the program here again shortly.
Of course.
Yeah.
I have to come back and talk about my book, so we'll
Oh,
later. I'll
hold
send-
on a second.
We blew it.
talk about, I already mentioned the company, so I'll come back to it.
I'm going to read the book cover to cover, and we'll have you back when I'm done. How does that sound?
Oh.
That sounds good.
So I'll call you in 10 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody thinks I read really fast. That's not necessarily.
You do, though. You do read. You even write books faster than most people.
Yeah. Every night and weekend for a year and a half.
Yeah, it's not too
Marlene,
bad. Yeah.
you can relate, isn't that true?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Thank
Russ,
you so much.
when is your book coming out, Russ? Russ, you there?
The 4th of July when it comes in
Okay,
August.
just checking. All right.
There we go. Marlene, thank you so much for your time this evening. We hope to have you again soon.
Bye, Liberty. Bye, Russ. Thank you so much. Thank you, Philly Chris and Mike. Love you guys.
Peace and
Bye-bye.
love. Thanks for being
Take
here.
care. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. Gary posted something. As of 2018, the U.S. had an estimated 17.4 deaths per 100,000 live births. That's small, right?
Is that
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's pretty small, actually.
is that due to abortion, or is that not counting it?
No, he's trying. I guess he's trying to
No.
say that the risk of dying from a
people
birth
dying.
is really low. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see what it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. All right. So we do have another special guest coming on at 8:30.
Yes, we do.
Is that
8:30. Yeah.
Is that whoever tried to call us? Somebody tried to call us during the program, and I'm like, what is this?
on the Skype?
Yeah.
And you didn't answer it?
No.
Oh.
Somebody from the Canadian Freedom Trucker Convoy, right?
Yeah. Oh, you
I have
should've-
no idea. It was like
Oh,
one of
okay.
those usernames that wasn't actually a username.
Interesting.
It was like
okay.
live.
It was that it was
something.
somebody trying to scam us, right?
Yeah.
I would say next time answer, but then you could always ditch it if you don't. But it could be interesting on the air to take a live Skype call. Why not?
Why
I don't
not?
know. Maybe not.
No.
That's up to Mike.
No.
Rock and
His
roll.
show.
The answer is
right?
no.
Tom Marazzo is going to be joining us. He's with Canadian Truckers Freedom Convoy. He was with the peaceful protest in Ottawa for over 3 weeks, speaking out against COVID vaccine mandates across Canada. He'll be with us shortly, allegedly.
Have you guys noticed that the news media seems to have forgotten about COVID? It's wall to wall Ukraine stuff.
Sure. You're absolutely right, Russ.
Everything, everywhere you go is blue and yellow stripes.
The only
Everyone
thing that I
seems
did
to have
notice in
forgotten
the
about
past few
COVID.
days is they were talking about some lockdowns in China. again.
China,
So,
yeah.
So there's
Well,
something
there's
going
other
on.
Yeah,
stuff
but that's
going on with
China.
China. China's supposedly going off of the petrodollar. Did you hear about this?
No.
Yes, sir.
So tell us when that could happen and what that would mean if it did happen.
Yeah. You talking to me, Mike? I assume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Russ doesn't know the answer.
No, I don't. For the record, I do
You're like,
not.
Oh, gee, Mike, the whole world
Can you
trades
take this
in
one, Russ?
oil and dollars.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I've mentioned a few times on the show over the past few years some things regarding that, our fiat currency and the Fed coin. They're talking about digital currency. So what truly concerns me about that, and if they do it, especially anytime soon, is that it would damage the dollar's value even more significantly than what we're seeing now with inflation.
Why? You have to explain
Yeah.
why. Tell us like we're all 5 and we have no idea how the dollar works and why that would be significant.
Okay. Yeah. As many of our listeners know, and all that, we have a fiat currency, so it's no longer backed by gold.
Hold on, you
And-
say as many, or I don't know that as many people as you think know this stuff.
Well, I know. I think I was
They
just
don't-
I was
you know-
complimenting our listeners. I said our listeners because
Sure, but they
they've
don't
been
teach
paying
you this
attention.
stuff in school, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's sad. Unfortunately, they don't, and it's by design. A lot of things are by design, as I've mentioned over the past few years, in my opinion, and also not in my opinion. But because we have a fiat currency, the more currency that's printed through quantitative easing.
Back it up. You got to really, really, really explain it to everybody. What is a fiat currency?
What's a
Oh,
dollar?
I'm getting a call from Canada. Let me take this. It might be our guest.
Okay.
Okay, hold on a second.
What's a dollar?
Hello, this is Philly Chris speaking.
Hi, it's Tom Morazzo calling. I got a voicemail from somebody from the number this morning. But it was
This is we were talking about having you live on the air. I'm actually on the air right now. We'd love to have you join. I did have your Skype information. It was provided by. Yeah, were you available to do it?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
So you're WFYL?
That's correct. Yeah, out of Philadelphia.
You've got my Skype, I think.
We're on the show, right? I actually answered, so you're on the show already. But hey, Russ, why don't you patch in this gentleman with his Skype that I put in the doc there for you, and then we'll get you in on the Skype. And thanks for being able to make it. We know you have a lot going on, and we're really looking forward to hearing about it.
Sure. No problem at all.
So we'll keep you on for a moment.
Skype him up. Skype him up.
What was that? I'm sorry. Yeah, you've been driving?
I've been driving all day today, yeah.
Oh, okay. Where are you now?
I'm just outside of Kingston in Ontario.
Excellent. Yeah, we can't wait. Our listeners are eager to hear about your adventures and what you've been up to. Yeah, and you're speaking of a big speaking engagement tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah, on Saturday around noon.
Oh.
There's in Toronto. It'll be, we're expecting upwards of 10,000 or more.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow.
Yes.
That's great.
Right in the capital city of Ontario.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to get our producer. Are you having any success there, Russ, with the ID from the doc?
I'm getting there.
Okay. Let me just confirm it with you real quick, Tom.
Sure.
Yeah, we have.
And
I was given live.camen. And then there's one last letter on the end there, so I don't say the whole thing on the air. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good.
All right.
Somebody connected with me at about 8:15ish, I think.
That might have been.
When I opened up my Skype, you guys were already kind of loaded in there, and I just sent a text through Skype.
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good. Let's get him on.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get you right on. Why don't I mute for a moment? You guys can talk, Mike, and I'll just make sure we're good here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, I sent him a wave earlier, and I don't know if he has to accept it first in order for me to call him. Otherwise, Skype wants to charge us money.
He said it smiled back, Russ, so that should be right.
He's
video
back.
call, yes.
Waving and smiling over
Yeah.
here on the air.
Yeah, the video call option would be great.
Very cool.
Oh, I've got it.
Okay.
I hit merge.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, there you
We
are.
got him.
Welcome to the show. All right.
Yeah.
I'm
There
gonna
he is.
get off the phone with you and
Sure.
we'll go there.
Okay.
I know you've had a
Now,
long
I gotta see
day.
if I can hear.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Turn off incoming.
We definitely can.
Audio and video. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, take your time. You're good. We're
Camera works.
doing a live show here. So
My
it's all good.
microphone works. I think you can hear me, but I
We
can't
can
hear you.
certainly hear you. We can
Mhm.
certainly hear you.
Speakers. I know why.
You just can't
Oh,
hear us
Yeah.
yet.
Mhm.
Now I can hear you.
You can hear
Welcome.
us. That
All
is
right.
beautiful.
Yes.
Thank
Yes, I
you
can hear
so
you.
much for joining us. We know you've had a really busy day out there on the road,
Yeah.
making the world turn, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a really busy 6 weeks, 8 weeks now.
Wow.
Almost. Yeah, it's been
So
really.
let me just introduce you to our guest. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. Such a fitting guest for the Freedom Station. We've got Tom Marazzo joining us with the Canadian Truckers Freedom Convoy of 2022. And he's here. He's going to discuss the peaceful protest held in Ottawa. Lasted over 3 weeks, speaking out against COVID vaccine mandates across Canada. There has been speculation that we'll see something similar here in the States, down in D.C. Everybody who is intelligent is getting prepared in advance, because guess what? Like I said, guys like Tom keep this world spinning round. You'll run out of stuff real quick if they don't get out there on the road. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect.
I'm Giaramita, and that gets butchered quite often. But I guess because we get that Italian connection.
Yeah.
Right on the head.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Are there a lot of Italians in Canada?
Yeah, well, so I was born and raised in Niagara Falls, and there's a pretty significant Italian population in Niagara Falls, Ontario, on the Canadian side.
Oh, very cool.
We did all our drinking as teenagers on the American side of Niagara Falls. Yeah.
Oh, really? Interesting. I used to go to Canada sometimes when I was under 21.
Yeah, but we could get in. See, the funny thing is we could get into the clubs in Niagara Falls, New York. We weren't technically allowed to drink, but, obviously, young kids are industrious.
Right. That's very true. Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how long you've been a trucker?
I'm not actually a trucker. I'm a retired Canadian Army officer, and I had people that were connected to the convoy said, this is a job that would probably be well suited for guys like you. Would you mind coming to Ottawa and giving us a hand? And I think by the time I put the phone down, it was 3 hours later, I was sitting in Ottawa.
Wow. So coordination and things of that nature, the real strategy behind this and getting things planned.
Yeah. And then I, as time went on, I made a few calls to some other retired military friends of mine. And I said, I could really use you here in Ottawa. And,
it might even be a good idea. I just want to interject real quick. I was talking to Patrick today, who connected the two of us. And Mike is an attorney by profession. He was so busy today, so he didn't even get to read some of the notes I'd sent over to him, because we actually even went on air late. Maybe you could go through your bio a little for all of our listeners real quick, which would be great.
Sure. Really the highlights basically for me is, I did a lot of cross-border drinking as a teenager in Niagara Falls, New York.
No. There we go.
First and foremost.
Right. Welcome to the show.
But I very young as a high school student, I joined the Canadian Army Reserves as an infanteer, and then I worked my way through college. And when I finished college, I enrolled in the regular force Army, and I took my commission as a combat engineer officer. And then I spent the next 18 years doing that. And I was injured in a parachute accident just in May of 2001. And, it went untreated for a long time. So I retired in 2015. And then I actually went back to school under a program, even though I already had a master's degree by that point. I went in and I did another undergrad degree in software. So when I finished the software degree in 2019, immediately I ended up starting to teach. And I was teaching for 2 years when the pandemic and everything started. And then I actually sent that in August of last summer, the college I was teaching at put out their COVID mandates. Yeah. So it became mandatory for employment that you had to partake in the experiment.
Yeah, sure.
And so I pushed back, and within 4 days of that, I got fired. And so I've been completely unemployed since since the second week of September. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I, we sold the house, and we bought land about 300 kilometers away. Mm-hmm. And we were just kind of gearing up to start building a house, and then I got a call to get involved in the convoy, because when the convoy rolled through, I was glued to social media in alternative media to find out more about the convoy.
Yeah.
And so I actually arrived. I was a fan. I was watching it all over social media. I went to the highway when they were driving by, and I ended up 2 days later after they had arrived. They arrived on Friday. I was there by the middle of Sunday afternoon, and they were coming from all over the country, and they arrived, and the rest, was kind of history as to my involvement, and it was an incredible experience. I wish there was a way to reach out and have a secure phone call with the actual leaders of the U.S. convoy heading to D.C. It'd be nice, like just to kind of pass on some of the lessons that we learned. But the good news is Dr. Alexander, who is with the convoy back in D.C., he was with us the whole entire time in Ottawa.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen over here.
Oh, they've already arrived. Yeah. They've already arrived on the outskirts of D.C. There's, what is it? Your Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Johnson have already met with them. They've been in the trucks. They're doing laps. Whether or not they're going to be able to get into the core of the city is another thing. But I think they're going to be filling up the outskirts of D.C. Gotcha. Yeah. But I know the convoys have already started to arrive.
The mainstream media is trying to make it seem like it's fizzling out and not really going to happen.
We battled the mainstream media every single day we were in Ottawa.
There's vandalism and there's a bunch of white supremacists being violent and stuff and hateful, right?
Yep. And so what was incredible is once we got onto the ground and we were right there, right in front of our Parliament building, which is our sort of equivalent to your Capitol building, or we don't really have a version of the White House. That's pretty unique. And
these days that might be a good thing, but
I'm wondering, right? but what the mainstream media refused to acknowledge is that once we got into place, we had so many donations coming from all over Canada. I'm talking like money, cards, food. People were donating porta potties to us.
We actually had a good question already in the comments from Scott Frey, Mike. I don't know if you can see the comments as well, but
I can now.
Yeah, but he was asking specifically a little bit about what you were saying. It says, Mike, can you ask him if they unfroze the truckers' bank accounts? Yeah. Are there any lawsuits against Trudeau for doing that? So
great question. My account and several hundred other people did get their bank accounts frozen.
Wow.
But when our prime minister rescinded the Emergency Act here, all of the bank accounts and the credit cards and everything became unfrozen again. However, I've been told that we're all on this secret bank list for the rest of our lives now, which is kind of meaningless to me because... So my name's on a list, and my name's on a whole bunch of lists.
I'm trying to get on as many lists as I can get on.
Yeah. Well, even if they were to say to me, well, you're on a no-fly list, I'd say, well, how has my life just changed with that knowledge? Because as an unvaccinated Canadian, I'm not allowed to leave my country.
Right.
I cannot board an airplane to even fly to the next city. I cannot get on a train or a boat.
Thank you for standing up for your rights and our rights. Everything you just shared is quite impressive, and the price you're paying personally for it is crazy that we're living through all this. So thank you for what you've done. It's amazing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and I think one thing, because we all looked at it for almost 2 years and we're like, what can I do? And there's protests all over the world. And what do the politicians do? They just close the curtains and they walk away. They just go about their business and they screw your lives even more. But you can't do that when there's this big, giant, 15,000-pound thing on wheels that's literally parked in front of your building, honking its horn day in and day out. You can't ignore that. You can't just pretend like it's business as usual.
Right.
And I can't tell you the number of Canadians that came up to us on the streets in Ottawa and said, for the first time in 2 years, I'm proud to be a Canadian again.
Mm-hmm.
And people would carry hockey sticks with a Canadian flag attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, the mainstream media attacked us as racists, like just misogynist and all sorts of vile things. But you know what? In our time there, we shoveled the snow on the sidewalks and all around the trucks. We always maintained safe lanes for emergency vehicles, always.
Mm-hmm.
We put salt down where we shoveled. We had so much food left over, we fed the truckers and we fed the homeless. We provided first aid. We did garbage collections on the streets and put all bags of garbage on the corner for the city to come and pick up. We actually gave first aid to somebody once who almost OD'd, and we actually revived a person from that. Wow. So a lot of the residents were saying that they've never felt as safe as they felt in the city of Ottawa when we were there.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the mainstream media will tell you that we were actually a bunch of rapists, racists, and that we were actually there to overthrow the government. So what we did is we were, I think, really successful at ignoring the mainstream media. We didn't talk to them. We didn't allow interviews. We just talked to alternative media and social media. And and it frustrated them.
Mm-hmm.
But, bad behavior, bad consequence. If you were actually there to report the truth, you got interviews. We wanted to talk to you. But every single weekend, it was literally like you've got the 4th of July, we have the 1st of July for Canada Day. But every single weekend that we were there in Ottawa, it was like a Canada Day celebration, weekend after weekend after weekend, and thousands of people came into the streets. And they tried to take our gas cans away so we couldn't fuel the vehicles.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, we played a few of the clips on the show.
People started showing up with gas cans. And they had drinks in them, or they had money, they were collecting cash donations, or they were just carrying them to throw the police off because there was too many gas cans to tell if one of them had fuel in it or not.
I saw that. It was like a flash mob type thing. Yeah, what a great tactic.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And so, we worked hard to take the pressure off of the city of Ottawa and the residents and the police and keep it on the federal government. But it seemed like the police and the government didn't want to allow that opportunity. They wanted to make sure that they were building a justification to use the violence that they used at the very end when the police came in with a massive arsenal of weapons, and it was ridiculous. Beating up veterans. Like I saw them beating up veterans. I don't know if you saw the clip where they ran 2 people over with the horses.
I did see that.
I was 15 feet away from that woman and that man when they got trampled by the horses. But what you don't see is the fact that behind us were concrete barriers that the police had put up. And so between the line of police and the concrete barriers, that crowd that was in that space, you couldn't back up and get out of the way of those things. So we were kind of trapped in there. And then, unless the back of the crowd jumped over the concrete barrier and gave us space, you weren't going to move. So there's a lot of aftermath to this. But we were incredibly inspired by the fact that, the trucker protest started in all over Europe, France. I think we were up to 27 countries that after the Canadian trucker convoy, then 27 countries had their own trucker convoy. And I think the one that's happening in DC is probably going to be the biggest. That's, the mother of all truck convoys getting into that area. And we're incredibly encouraged to see that because these politicians need to remember that they work for us, not the other way around.
Right.
And a really good veteran friend of mine the other day, he reminded me, he says, because he was in the Windsor-Detroit bridge and he got arrested. And he said, the people got so desperate that our version of the Emergency Act was the convoy. That was the People's Emergency Act.
Right. That makes
sense. The convoy.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it's your show and I'm blabbing.
No, that's why we have you here. We have you here to tell the story. This is something that, we pick up bits and pieces through whatever source of media that we can.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with the disconnect, being in a different country, it's sort of difficult to keep an eye and know what's really going on, especially with what the mainstream media is putting out there. I think a lot of our listeners and our audience members suspected, if not confirmed through different social media accounts, that everything that was being put out there was bogus. But it's pretty fascinating. Fascinating.
It's difficult in Canada because we have the CBC, it's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and they are funded by the Canadian taxpayers. So we pay for it, but the government controls the messaging. And I think I did a press conference in Ottawa, and I said, in 1933, Adolf Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany. And the first thing that he did was put a radio in every single German household in his country. Because he was controlling the airwaves. He gave everybody the message that he wanted them to hear. And, it's no different except for the fact that we're the ones who buy the radio, which in this case now is the television.
Sure.
And they pump in whatever message that they want. And it's incredibly difficult to counteract.
Programming.
Yes, it is programming for sure. And so we really think that we were quite successful on the social media in the alternative media front in getting the truth out to people. So, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy because they're the mainstream, I call them the mainstream mercenaries. They're like a pack of wolves. I made a joke. I took it from one of your shows, the West Wing. I was a huge fan of the West Wing. And I made a joke about Justin Trudeau having a 22 caliber mind in a 357 Magnum world. And, it's funny, but, the headlines in the paper were the next day that we were there as, with weapons and violence and guns, and we wanted to overthrow the government.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
It looks so violent on Instagram. Yeah. It's amazing what they believe now. You're right.
That is out of control.
Yeah.
How ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
That poses a serious problem. Is anybody on board with maybe getting rid of that whole thing where the government controls the media?
A lot of people have been calling for years to defund the CBC. And, we not only are they funded by the taxpayer to the tune of over $1 billion a year, but they're also allowed to do their own advertising and raise their own revenue through alternate sources, right? And so there's always been a big call to defund the CBC, because if they actually created content that was trustworthy, I don't think the public would have a hard time, or advertisers would have a hard time, giving them money for them to survive. But at this point, you just think they should just be called the Canadian Propaganda Corporation. I mean, what is Orwell called it? The Ministry of Truth.
That's right.
Right, and don't be caught having wrongthink.
That's right.
And I was in an interview the last day I was there. I had 2 interviews, and it was a African American woman. Great interview. It was going well. And then she brought up the Confederate flag stuff. And I answered it truthfully, the issues surrounding the flag and stuff. But and I don't often go back and look at the comments of a lot of the interviews I've done. But this one I was interested to see. Her own audience turned on her. Her audience turned on her. They were extremely upset at her that she would bring in, use that platform. We're literally fighting for our lives and our freedom in this country and around the world.
Yeah.
And she brought in sort of this woke type of stuff to blindside me with in the interview. Completely inappropriate for the entire conversation, but she took her shot. I think I did fine answering it, and her audience seemed to agree. We have to stop being distracted by other things and keep our eye on the fact that every first world nation today, this very day, what are we, March 17th, are less free than we have ever been in all of our nation's histories.
Yeah.
We are less free today than we've ever been. And a lot of big moves on both sides of the borders and both sides of the ocean have been made in the last 2 years. And, you know, if people don't start waking up, they're going to be in real big trouble.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, Tom. Don't you think that the more they've tried to shut you folks down and the harder they pushed against you, the more other people are starting to realize, hey, this is much worse than we thought, and we ought to do something about this?
Yeah, and you know what? An interesting thing for us was that, you know, we're there because of COVID mandates, but a lot of Canadians actually started to wake up when they realized that without a warrant for your arrest, without an actual charge or any form of a conviction, all of your financial assets could be frozen, right? Because we're well aware of the universal basic income. We're well aware of digital ID, and all these governments moving to put all of your controls basically into one sort of database, and to turn you off if you have wrongthink, according to the Ministry of Truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm just reading that comment. It's normalization. I agree. And there's an interesting man. His name was Yuri Bezmenov. He defected from Russia. He was a KGB agent.
Some of his videos.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, he defected to Canada in the late 70s. And he did a talk about, you know, there are 4 steps to completely destabilizing a nation. And the one that I always remember is the one called demoralization. And if you look at the word itself, and it goes to, I think, Len Larson's comment about normalization. When you look at that word, demoralize. So you have a set of morals and a set of values. And what the first 20 years of that is multi-generational, like 3 generations, through a deliberate process of taking the morals out of your society. And that's the longest and the most difficult phase of this 4-phase plan. But as you go down the subsequent steps, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And so what you've seen over the last 2 years, and if you go back and you just Google or you go on YouTube and you watch the Yuri Bezmenov video, he talks about those later stages. In the last ones are very short, and then the very last one could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And so people are going, you know, whoever is behind all this stuff, they've made some really, really big moves lately.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you wonder, are we in the last 2-year phase, like phase 3, or are we in the phase 4,
Sure.
the final thing? It's really hard to unpack it all.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a guy trained in this who's coming to Canada and saying, hey, this is how it's done. I've done it. Like we did it in Russia. We do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it is normalization for sure. It's conditioning. And I think the banking, when they went after the banking, because we only have 5 large chartered banks here in Canada and the rest are credit unions, whereas you guys have like thousands of banks across the US. One of our banks, they had a run on their banks. They had to shut down their ATM machines.
Right.
When Canadians were panicking because they thought, I donated to the GoFundMe or Give Send Go, and you're telling me now I'm about to get my bank shut down or my accounts frozen. So people panicked and there was a run on the bank. And from what we understand, or the way we have assessed it, is that it wasn't the government that decided to do it. We believe it was the Banking Association in Canada that called them up and said, hey, knock it off. And if they didn't, we're pretty sure that the US State Department would have probably been making a public statement calling out Trudeau for being, you know, Trudeau.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of interesting stuff. Of course, it's speculation. I wasn't on a phone call with, you know, the Bank Association or the State Department, but the people I've been advised by are used to operating in those realms.
Mm-hmm.
Scott asked, how do they know how to get the account numbers to know which ones to freeze?
Yeah.
So that's a great question, because we have this thing called, I believe it's called FinTrack, like Financial Track, and it's a system that was formed by our federal government.
And then it must be trustworthy, right?
Yeah, it must be trustworthy. It is. It is, right? Like sure. I'm literally paying my taxes to set this stuff up.
It sounds safe and secure.
It is. and so with FinTrack, it was set up to combat organized crime and domestic terrorism. So if law enforcement through investigations could make the legal case that this particular person or this organization was funding terrorism or domestic terrorism or organized crime or whatever it is, they could use that mechanism to freeze accounts. So somehow there's 42 of us that got on this RCMP list. It's RCMP, if people don't know, is our version of the FBI. So they put together this list of 42, and my name was on this list. And they said, okay, they went to all the banks and they said, you must do a search in your databases for these customers. And then they found us and confirmed we were who we were. And then they froze our accounts. But they also used the same system to go after, I think it's 200,000 Canadians that contributed to GoFundMe.
It's even the small amounts, like $50, right?
$50.
I saw some of that.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes. So in my particular case, one of the credit card that I had on file with the drugstore wouldn't allow the charges to go through to get my son's heart medication.
That's insane. It's just insane.
And yet no warrant, no charge,
right,
and no conviction. But they went straight to, punishment without any due process at all. And the hard part of this is he I just call him JT, Justin Trudeau. I just call him JT. He went from having the Emergency Act. He ended the Emergency Act on a Wednesday, and I believe on the Thursday, the very next day, he got up and did a press conference and said that he was for freedom and democracy everywhere, and that he stands with the people of Ukraine. Well, only 4 days before that, he was sending in his brown shirt thugs with badges, right, and literally beating up veterans that were standing in front of the war memorial. Right. You look up some of the up some of the stuff. Now, this has kind of inspired me and actually a really good friend who was in Ottawa with me, a retired Navy officer. It was really his brainchild, but he didn't have to convince me to join. But we're starting an organization called Veterans for Freedom. Okay. And we're launching that website actually this Saturday. So I'm going to announce it during my speech in Toronto. And the very next day, Drew, he's also going to be announcing it and talking more in depth about it at another event in Toronto. But it's basically, what we realized in Ottawa was that as ex-military officers and senior NCOs, and we knew that we had a very particular and useful skill set to help out with all of the planning, the tactical, and I don't mean tactical as in, with guns and stuff, but let's say the strategic planning of what was going on and logistics thinking and support on how to maintain, that kind of what we would just call an operation. And what we want to do with Veterans for Freedom is be able to lend that same type of skill to other people or other organizations that are going to organize a large protest. So it's not that we're in there to take it over. It's just that we're going to go in and try to make it smooth. Mm-hmm. Right. And we recognize that was really an important thing that we brought to Ottawa to help out. So there's definitely a matching of skills from the military community and then getting involved in, the logistical nightmare of a protest in your nation's capital.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Really, Chris, I know you're itching to get involved here. Go. Go ahead.
I won't speak in my language.
I'm gonna pass the reins. I know that you're aware that I've got the hard stop. I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bow out.
Okay.
And thank everybody. Tom, Philly Chris is going to take the ball from here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate you being on the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more if you have a few more minutes. Yeah. Excellent.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Unfortunately, Mike had a personal situation you need to attend to tonight with a hard stop there. But yeah, no, I find it fascinating. A lot of what you shared with us and being there on the ground, experiencing all that. I was following it pretty closely on the social media platforms, and it was really interesting to watch the coverage. And I did notice to some degree how the folks up there were avoiding the mainstream media, which was very effective, actually, because then you could really see it for yourself. We played a few clips on the show of the drivers being interviewed. And I think I played the clip, too, of the elderly gentleman who was basically assaulted by the two officers after honking his horn. I think it was the day you're probably familiar with that.
Yes. Yeah.
What were some of the other things that you saw that were just while you were on the ground? Yeah.
Yeah. So Alexa Lavoie, she's one of the, I would say, alternative media here. They're headquartered out of Toronto, but they have their journalists in Europe. They've got a really great guy in Australia. I've been following the Australian stuff very closely.
Sure.
And you say what you want about the Canadian law enforcement and the Canadian government here, but I think it pales in comparison to what the Australians have been going through for the last 2 years.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about some of the stuff going on there in the show. I played a few clips about whether people were being basically locked into those small homes. They couldn't even step off their porch, right? So
weren't allowed out to exercise. If you had a job, they didn't consider your job to be an essential service. So, maximum coercion. We're in this country, in Canada, coercion, violating informed consent through coercion is actually in the Criminal Code of Canada. I believe it's Section 365 of the Criminal Code, but it's being ignored, just like our Charter of Rights are.
Sure.
And the interesting thing about Australia is part of, like Canada, part of the British Commonwealth. So, there's Canada, Australia, New Zealand. There's I think a few other countries in Africa that are part of the British Commonwealth. But of all of the British Commonwealth countries, Australia is the only one that does not have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Okay, even in Canada, we had a Bill of Rights, which in America you have a Bill of Rights, but we have a Charter of Rights, and it was an amendment to the Constitution Act of 1982, where we codified our Charter of Rights. And when that was brought into law, it has to be considered, the Constitution and the Charter of Rights are the supreme law of this country. And immediately when it was accepted into law, all laws underneath had to be reviewed to make sure that they came into compliance with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And if they didn't, they had to be either removed or amended. And all of our law enforcement, when they go through their police training, they're taught everything about the charter. Like every arrest, every interaction, it's always about the Charter of Rights. And their oath is to uphold the Charter of Rights.
Sure.
And if you look at a place like Australia, they don't have a charter.
Right.
So what are the police in Australia swearing an oath to?
Sure.
Right. The Magna Carta of like the year 12,000 and something.
Right.
So it gets really, and you wonder, well, how are they getting away with it?
Sure.
Like they're violating people's rights.
Because they can, basically, right? Yeah. I mean,
they don't have a legal framework to protect themselves.
Yeah. No, and some of the things I've seen, in video clips shared on most of the social media platforms over there, and the full-on assault of just citizens in the street and restriction of movement on your own residential address. If you live on that street, they're telling you can't even be on there and show an ID. So it's crazy what's going on, and even here on U.S. soil, I'm 50 years old now. I don't know exactly how old you are, but
I'm right around the corner.
Right, I'm like, okay, yeah. Welcome to the club soon enough. A few years. It looks like you got at least 5 or 10 years there. But
no, I got about a year and a half. I got a year and a month.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, everything's going wrong now. 50, but I just find it fascinating, and I tend to talk about certain things on the topics that quote unquote might get me called a conspiracy theorist. But I tell you what, I've seen more things that were quote unquote conspiracy theories turn into real conspiracies over the past few years. I had a feeling to some degree that some of this stuff might happen during my lifetime. Some of the things I've witnessed myself and people I've spoken to, and you have some military experience, so forth and so on, without getting into so much detail. But to see it happening for real and now is quite troubling, obviously more than troubling. And to see folks like yourself who have put yourself in harm's way and paid the ultimate price, financially and other things. Thank you again for doing that. And it's sad to see people having to do that, but not enough people, I think, are taking the ultimate sacrifice, which may become more necessary. But, before I go too far with that, what are your thoughts on kind of what I was saying and how much of this is really, quote unquote, by design globally? Do you have any thoughts on that? Would you like to speak?
Well, from my perspective, I think that, I don't know, people use the term cabal and all sorts of stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind that this entire agenda has been planned for decades and decades. And if your listeners are interested, there's a phenomenal movie series called Zeitgeist, and it was done by a guy named Peter Joseph. And if you're going to watch any of the documentaries that he's done, I would say watch the first one. Okay. And it starts to talk about Zeitgeist spends a lot of time talking about 9/11. And I remember I was, in Gagetown at New Brunswick on an Army base. And, I was in the officer's mess when we found out that what had happened. And we were all in the mess, glued to the TV, watching what was going on. And I remember the news reporting saying, yeah, they're going to do a controlled demolition and bring it down. And I'm like, okay, I'm an engineer and I work with explosives I'm an engineer in Canada, like
interesting
trained. Okay. Wow. And I'm a combat engineer that I've dealt with explosives. And I've blown up structural steel and bridges and cars and concrete and all sorts of stuff. And so, I was looking at, and somebody said, well, Building 7, somebody said they're gonna bring down Building 7 on a controlled demolition. And I'm like, there's no possible way you're gonna do that in the amount of time it takes. It takes months.
To set it up.
Set it up. So, and then Building 7 came down. And then, of course, I've got to go see my soldiers the next day and say, okay, start getting ready, start packing. We don't know where we're going, but I got a feeling we're going somewhere.
Sure.
But then life went on, and then I forgot all about Building 7, right? And then the Zeitgeist movie came out 6 years later. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's right, Building 7. And it just started to come back to me. And here's the issue. Yeah, Peter Joseph. Here's the issue with that. From a structural point of view, you have steel columns that are pile drive right down to bedrock, or like thousands and thousands of tons of concrete underground to hold up those steel columns.
And they're protected with some special insulation for fires too, right?
Well, they're protected by concrete, and then once the concrete, often depending on which part of the building, in the residential, they'll also be wrapped in 2 layers of 4-hour fire retardant drywall.
Right.
So the official narrative was like, well, the JP-5 rocket fuel, or the fire that came off of the main build order since George Bush Sr.
That's right. Yeah, he said it publicly during his speech. Yeah.
Yeah, always talking about the New World Order.
Sure.
And then when COVID came out, you had Joe Biden talking about Build Back Better. Yeah, Justin Trudeau saying build back better. Angela Merkel in Germany, build back better. The French guy, build back better.
Right.
You know, I'm sorry, but you can't, look at the definition of what a conspiracy is. It's two or more people coming together to make a plan of some sort of,
Good
there's
point.
a better definition of that. But
Sure.
when you're looking at it, if all the world leaders are saying the same sound bites, then is that not by definition a conspiracy?
Right. Yeah, no, you bring up a very good point. And unfortunately, we've been programmed to, not instead of critically thinking, what did you say? I like the way you put it.
Just deductive reasoning.
Yeah, deductive reasoning. I think there's a lack of that. And unfortunately, with all the programming on mainstream media on both sides, I'll say that, and who wants to believe that? Who wants to believe that something like 9/11, there could be something more nefarious there? I certainly don't want to believe that, but you have to look at it and the facts of the situation. I have some experience flying when I was younger, and there are a lot of things that don't make sense for me that day, regarding that aspect of it. And I've looked into the 9/11 reports and spoken to actual folks like yourself with your credentials, structural engineers, just so I could better understand it. And there's still a lot of questions I have from that day in particular. And we've talked a little bit about it on the show. But then, of course, you talk about these things and people just don't want to hear it, and gets brushed under the carpet over the years, and then there's new things going on, of course. So but where we are now, and the potential financial collapse we're all facing, and I talk about currency on the show quite a bit, and we're seeing what's happening here with inflation and the dollar, and now China's talking about trading oil with their currency as opposed to the world currency, the dollar. So any thoughts on that with the economic stuff? I really appreciate what you're discussing with us tonight. I'd love to get your take on that.
So my wife and I, we sold our house after I got fired, and we were looking for about a year. We had 4 acres on a river in a very isolated pot. It was great, but heavily regulated. And so my wife also retired from the military, so we were like, what's the point of being in this area? Let's go somewhere else, find a bigger piece of land in a more isolated area. So we did sell our house, and we looked and looked and looked. We found a really beautiful, isolated, large, over 100 acres. And, our plan was, if something isn't drastically done, if things in this country don't change, then we're going to have to start talking about a parallel society here for as long as we'll be allowed. Right.
Good point.
And just that line of thinking has started to put us in touch with a whole network of people that are doing the same thing. So it's like, if you're kicking me out of this society, one, I'm going to stop paying taxes for all those services you've just denied me because I'm unvaccinated. And two, instead of buying, investing in the markets and then I'm going to start taking my money out, and I'm going to buy things like a lumber mill, which is what I did. I bought a portable woodland mill 2 years ago.
Oh, that's cool. All right.
And I mill my own lumber.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love that type of stuff. That's great. Yeah.
I got certified as an aquaponics system designer about a year ago.
Oh, wow. All right.
I've got a greenhouse. I've got an aquaponics system. I've got, I'm investing right now in my skills. I'm not investing in a market.
Right.
And so, funny thing, I was asked to speak at this church the other night, and it was a wonderful time. And I told the story about somebody on YouTube was saying, you should be buying gold, buy gold, buy gold. And so I commented on their site. I said, hey, have you put any thought, or have you considered buying seeds? And his response to me was, yeah, the gold is to buy seeds, dummy. I just thought, wow. You think you could show up with a big giant donkey cart full of gold, and I'm not going to take your gold in exchange for my seeds. Those seeds are going to feed my family and my community.
Sure.
Right. And so I've talked to several people that, I guess preppers, you want to call them preppers. I've talked to preppers.
Right.
And we all agree here that take all of the disposable amount of money that you have right now, start buying tractors, start buying portable mills, start buying those things where you can buy a 3D printer, start buying the items that you're going to be able to use to sustain your life if the entire economy collapses.
Yeah, you could then have some sort of barter system too. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
If there's any money left over, then sure, go and buy some gold and silver.
Yeah, it's good to diversify anyway. So you could have
I know there's at least one
that.
customer to trade with on YouTube. There's at least one guy out there.
There we go. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And potentially, I talk about some of the precious metal stuff on the show a little bit. And you're right. If it gets to that point, that stuff, does lose its value because, what's going to be more important is feeding your family and all that. Yeah. But, in the short term, maybe if the market were to take such a deep dive and correction, at least it would be a safe haven for a period of time, hopefully anyway. Yeah. And then stock up on that other stuff.
I cashed one of my, since I get our tax year, I think is the same as yours, January 1st, you're in a new tax season.
Right.
I cashed my RSP that I had to pay for my entire year so that I didn't, so that I could work on our land.
Sure. That's great.
Because I don't have any confidence that by the time I'm old enough to start collecting the income from that RSP, that RSP is still going to even exist.
It's a great question right now, especially with how things are going. And what do you think? Where do you see this going? Do you think we've passed any points of no return, or do you think we could turn this around at this point? I'm very interested in your perspective because you're so well versed in a lot of different topics. What are your thoughts on that?
I know it sounds cliche. I really do know that this sounds extremely cliche. But from my observation, and I want to back this up and say that the moment that I found out that Justin Trudeau had initiated the Emergency Act,
yes,
I was literally getting a personal one-on-one tutorial from the last living author of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. He was a former premier of Newfoundland. His name is Brian Peckford.
Okay.
He's the last living author of the Charter of Rights. This was the equivalent to sitting in a room by John Adams, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, that's
and getting a one-on-one tutorial about what was in the minds of the men and the women who created the Charter. What was the thinking at the time? What was the spirit of the law that they were trying to enshrine with our values? And that's the moment I found out that he had initiated the Emergency Act, thereby taking away all of our rights and freedoms.
Right. I remember hearing about it, and I didn't even fully understand it. Obviously, not living there, but it's fascinating that that's something he could do. And I think some people have even said possibly he may have gone too far and shown his cards, if we will.
He did. He went too far. And so, I've talked to Brian a few times since, and I shouldn't. I feel foolish using the term Brian. Mr. Peckford, I think, is more appropriate. He's certainly earned that. But we realize that in this country, we don't teach people politics. And I'm not talking about teaching them racial politics. I'm not talking about gender politics. I'm literally saying things like, how do laws in this country get made?
Sure.
What are the mechanisms of government? What are the levels of government? This is something that should be taught around grade 8, right? At the beginning of high school, at least. You don't learn about that stuff unless you take a political science degree in college or university in this country,
sure,
as a specialization. So on one hand, from my perspective, I need to accept some responsibility that I've completely just ignored politics. I vote, I move on.
Right.
And then when I don't like something happening, then I criticize. Right. Whereas if ever there was a time that Canadians need to know about how the political system operates, it's now. Because we showed up and the people have power, but the government has force. And for a long time, we had the power and they didn't like it. So they applied their force to the crowd.
Absolutely.
And in 2 days, I mean, I watch these RCMP clowns show up with, you know, AR-15s with you know, 30 round mags, chest harness full of ammo.
Yeah.
You know, and silencers.
It's
silencers.
pretty wild to
weapons,
see. It's really
to take
wild,
on a peaceful protest
Sure.
with no weapons. And so they brought the Force, and I don't mean in the Jedi sense, but they, you know, maybe the dark side.
Yeah, we need the Force on our side. We'll be the Jedi's.
Yeah, but I think if ever there was a time for people to get political knowledge,
right,
and then become politically active, because we've seen time and time again that when you protest, they just shut the curtain or shut the door, and they just go about ruining your life even more. So we have to understand all of the processes of politics and get involved in that, join in the fight from the inside, and hopefully at some point you're not corruptible. Once you get in, you're not compromised, and you learn how to beat them from within. And I think you have to be patient, but we're going to have to take back our politics before we can ever take back our countries.
Sure.
And I haven't told anyone, you know, officially this, but I am actually going to run as a member of provincial parliament. And I'm going to announce that on Saturday.
Oh, fantastic.
In Toronto.
Well, thanks for sharing it with us here on WFYL, the Freedom Station. Yeah.
I just don't know any other way that's going to be effective for them to listen. And I will say I refuse to be called a politician.
I like that.
You know, your founding fathers in your country did politics as a secondary duty.
That's right.
Lives
but a lot of people don't know that. That's right. I've had some conversations with folks about that. Yeah, it wasn't a lifelong career either back then. It was looked at like you kind of served your country for a little while and then went back to what you were doing. And
and
too much of that.
So from my point of view, I'll accept the term public servant or representative, but I will not. I refuse to be called a politician. Because when I'm done, you know, fighting the fight that we're in, I'm just going to go back to my own life. You know, I've never in my life had political aspirations. It's never been something that interested me. But I don't know how else to fight, because they don't listen in any other way unless it's actually in the House of Commons or through some sort of mechanism, you know, inside government.
Right.
I'm not expecting it's going to be easy. I'm not, you know, I'm expecting it's going to be, you know, more of a blood sport.
Sure.
But it's the only way that I can see that I can fight at this moment. It's not something I wanted to do. It's something that I feel at this point I'm called to do, and I have to do it.
Right.
So I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter. You know, it's to me, it's not even about the winning or the losing the election piece, because I've only got 2 months to run.
What you just said reminds me, I don't know if you've been following Ian Smith over at Attila's Gym in Belmar, New Jersey. Have you seen him at all?
No.
He stayed open here in New Jersey under Governor Murphy. He owns a gym with his partner, and they were fined every day. And they've still been fined. They've been in that accord, but he's running. I was having a conversation with him recently. We may be having him on the show at some point.
Good.
And he's gotten a lot of national attention here in the U.S. because of what he's done. He's made that personal sacrifice you just mentioned, and I commend you for doing that, because those guys are up against hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, possibly jail time, all kinds of things. So
Well, you know, in the beginning of this, I was always I had a lot of anxiety going out into public. I stopped wearing a mask about a year ago.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
I just refuse. I'm not
I did it a couple weeks into the pandemic. I actually started to do it and got a lot of pushback here publicly.
Yeah.
I've talked about it on the show because I talk to doctors that I trust, and I'm not telling anybody else what to do, but there's no science to support them.
Yes.
It's my understanding you can even get it through your eyes. I've had doctors tell me that. So if you're even wearing an N95, you're, you know, unless you have goggles or a 3M suit on that's OSHA certified and has been fit tested. We had a guest on who actually, showed the suit. And so I commend you on that as well. And again, hey, if you want to wear one, fine. I'm not telling you not to, but don't tell me, I've had people confront me, nearly physical in the public, yelling at me while I'm outside because I didn't have a mask on and I was 10 feet from them. And that to me is the world we're living in and the insanity of our reality right now and the Orwellian thought police that you've mentioned. So we are, on the same page. And, that's why I'm so thankful to be co-hosting the show here with Mike, who's doing a lot of work right now to protect people's rights in the Second Amendment arena. That's what he specializes in. And I know we didn't get a lot of time to talk before the show, but I'm so thankful for you coming on and what you're doing. And we did have a question in there. I think you kind of addressed it from Scott, but what would you say, or what advice would you give to many of us wonder what we can do to stand up for our rights? And you did go through a lot of that. How would you warn Americans based on what you've seen up there? Like, what would you specifically say to Americans?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I can tell you.
Yeah.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't run into a Canadian that are thinking about trying to move to America.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Like, and I'm not talking, I'm talking doctors, nurses,
really,
PhDs, carpenters, unemployed people. Like, everybody I know is thinking about moving to America.
That's fascinating.
They want to go to Republican states. They want to go to places like Florida.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, DeSantis, that's leadership.
Absolutely. I spent a little time down there during the pandemic. I continued to travel. I even did the show from down there a couple times.
Yeah.
And that's good to hear.
So it's a great question, because it's a question I get asked often. But I think, let me use this analogy between a man and a woman, right? A man could go and buy a woman a big giant diamond. Right? He leaves the cap off the toothpaste, he's still going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? Women are all about the little things. They're all about the little things. Right?
Where's Liberty? Liberty still there?
Yeah. Right?
Right.
And it's about the little things. And the little things add up to be big things.
Right.
And the little things set the conditions for the big things to actually happen. And so one of the smallest things that people can do right now, one is take off the mask. If you're in a state that has a mask.
Right.
The second thing is stop being afraid to talk to your friends and family about COVID.
Absolutely.
Stop worrying that they're going to treat you like the crazy drunk Uncle Bill. Right?
Sure. There's a lot of that going on. Yeah.
If they don't like the truth, or if they don't like your version of the truth, then, that we've always said that blood was thicker than water, but I think COVID over the last 2 years has really challenged that belief.
Sure.
And so if you can't talk to your families, eventually you're going to talk to a friend that is receptive to the ideas. Maybe you just haven't met them yet.
Right.
Then I would say start making groups. And I'm not talking about full-fledged preppers, but start talking to people about, it's very easy. Once you make that first contact, they're going to contact you with another person who's fully awake. And your network is going to grow a lot faster than you might think. You're not nearly as alone as you might think.
Right.
Start making those connections and those networks, and then start organizing for a parallel society. If we can't turn the politicians around, that's going to be really the next phase.
Right.
Is we're going to have to create a parallel society for as long as we can. But you don't do it all. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You have multiple parallel societies. The way I've got it set up is, we're going from one area to another. If one location eventually falls, well, we're going to all fall back to the other place. And I was talking to an amazing man the other day who was with us in Ottawa. And for 25 years, he was a Jehovah's Witness, and he's not with the witness anymore. And we were talking about guns, we were talking about tactics, we were talking about all sorts of stuff the other day. And he said, never in my life, in my wildest imagination, would I have to start ever have this out loud conversation with another Canadian in my life. And that's really, really telling. So
it's very telling. Yeah, no.
Yeah. What I think.
No, sometimes I feel like I'm still living in a bad movie. On a daily basis sometimes.
Yeah.
It really does feel that way. It's Twilight Zone-ish.
Well, here we have these rules. It's like you can go into a restaurant, but you got to wear a mask when you walk in. But when you sit down, you can take the mask off.
Sure. Yeah, that's how it's been in Philly, pretty much.
Yeah. It's like, is just the COVID currents going to go above my hair?
Magically, you're in your little safety space, I guess.
Yeah. Because COVID knows that you're sitting versus standing.
Right. It does somehow.
Well,
magically.
It sounds a lot like New York's indoor dining.
Yeah, right.
Where they had like these I don't know, shipping containers that they made into small buildings because at first people wanted a place to sit, so they had chairs, and then they're like, okay, well, it's kind of rainy or maybe it's too sunny, so they built a roof, and then it's too windy, and also cars splash the disgusting slush by when they drive by, so we need walls. People are stealing our chairs and tables. I guess we need doors and locks. And it turns
it's some of them down there.
It's like dining in a shed.
Yes.
Now we need lights because it's too dark now.
Right.
We need windows because
I did some video clips a few weeks ago. Even I was in Philly taking some video in the evening of the indoor-outdoor dining that Russ is referring to, and I walk around and I just shake my head because here I am in the where the founding fathers formed our constitutional republic, and you can walk in. I was down today at the Liberty Bell today, doing a promotional video for the show, and visiting someone I care about and dealing with some personal things. But it's fascinating me for me to be standing there in Independence Hall watching people outside with a mask on. And again, you can do that if you'd like. However, it's troubling to me to think that these folks are doing that when there really isn't a medical need, based on what my understanding is. And speaking to virologists, we've had some doctors help with content for the show, actual virologists and things of that nature. And it's just sad to see our freedoms slowly and now more rapidly eroding away, as you mentioned earlier. And anyone who's studied history, and I'm not saying I'm a great history buff or anything like that, but getting more political myself in the past several years out of necessity, looking at the phases of socialism to communism, things of that nature, where seem to be right in the midst of that. And
a really important thing that came up was my friend Drew. When we spoke at the church the other day, we both touched on one important item. If people are going to start doing these communities, which I think they should,
I've heard this from quite a few other people.
You cannot underestimate the negative impact of ego. If you can't convince everybody to keep focused on the mission, which is to produce food, shelter, and clean water, and in a relatively good standard of living for the children, if your ego is too big and you can't, you're fighting to be the big man on campus, it's never going to work.
Right.
You really have to struggle to keep your focus on the big picture. Some people are naturally going to lead and they're charismatic and people will just naturally follow. Some people want to be the leader, but they just don't have that natural ability.
Right.
And so I would say for the ones that don't have, let's say, the natural ability, you can lead in certain ways. It just doesn't mean that you're going to be the president of the United States.
Sure.
Right. Okay, that's a bad example. I'm sorry. That's a bad example.
Well, unfortunately,
the
it
best
is.
president you ever had was Josiah Bartlett from The West Wing. Shame. The best president you ever had.
Yeah, well, anybody would probably be better than what we have now. And I've said things on the show, it's just too many things are, going wrong, for this not to be somewhat by design or on purpose, in my opinion, but, and other people's opinions. And, I think watching this, and it's very interesting to get your perspective being up in Canada. And I've spent some time up there. I love Canada. I love Canadians, and everybody's so friendly. And I used to go up there in the late 80s, 90s, and I've been there, several times the past few years, but, And you know, most people even leave their doors unlocked up there. Isn't that true? Yeah, that's a true
I
thing,
don't,
right?
but
Maybe not now as much, but you know, 10, 15 years ago, right? That was like a thing up there, right?
I grew up in Niagara Falls, and we never locked the door. Never locked the door. In fact, the rule was there would always be a pot of coffee on. And if you came to the house and we weren't home, you go in the house, have a coffee, sit down, wait, somebody will come back.
That's great.
That's the way it was.
Well, I think that says a lot about, you know, the you know, society as a whole, and the, you know, the current condition of a society, which is great if you can live that way and be friendly and loving with your neighbors. It's sort of where you're saying we may need to head again, which you know, who knows, maybe it's for the better ultimately.
So you know, and it kind of reminded, like, that reminded me of something. In 2015, I was in, I think it's just outside of Orlando, Sanford, Florida. And I did my Krav Maga instructor course.
Oh, very cool.
And it was
very cool.
It was the biggest gut check of my life. And you know, I trained with some exceptional people down there. And but the one thing, I mean, this is a Canadian going to an open carry, stand your ground law state.
Right.
Okay. As a 25-year military guy, I don't even own a gun.
Interesting.
I don't even own a gun.
Yeah. All right.
And so for me, I was down there, and you know, I was training with a bunch of people. You know, men and women were on the course. And one day, one of the ladies on the course, great woman, she said, "Okay, I'll drive to lunch," because I flew down to Florida. I didn't have a car. And I pick up her purse, and I'm like, "Man, what the hell do you got in here?" She just looked at me like, my gun? Like I was a moron, right?
Right.
I'm like, "Okay, all right." So then the next day, one of the other guys drives. He goes, "Oh, hang on, I just got to move my gun out of the back seat."
Right.
And he goes, "It's like a guitar case." Right? And I'm like, "What is that?" I thought it was a guitar. He goes, "Well, it's my AR."
Sure.
So he puts it in the trunk, and he's got, you know, 2 big boxes of ammo. And I'm like, what's in the ammo cans? He's like, "Well, because I used to have ammo cans, I put my CDs in them."
Right. Yeah, they're great for that.
Yeah.
They're great for a lot of things.
And he's like, "Well,
and everything.
it's ammo."
He's got ammo.
Like, yeah. I'm like, "How much do you need?" And he goes, "Well, I shoot every Friday." And then he starts to, but the thing for me was, you know, we just have a different culture in terms of how we approach weapons. But what I learned about really has hit home for me in the last 2 years is, in certain places in the United States, the reason you have weapons is to protect yourselves from your government.
Exactly. Right. That's right.
And I never understood that. I'll be honest. And most Canadians don't. And I never understood that probably until the last year.
I've had this conversation thousands of times. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it's understandable that, you know, people would wonder, question that.
Yeah. Now, I do, you know, kind of wonder, do you need a 50 cal sniper rifle? Do you need a Gatling gun? I mean, I don't know, but maybe
Sure.
you do.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
You know, maybe you do. But if you look at something like, you know, escalation of force. Okay. So in Canada, 2 people get into a fist fight, there's a reasonably good chance nobody's going to get shot.
Sure.
Because either one of you brought a gun.
Right.
In America, when I was in Florida, every single day I'd flick on the news and they'd go at least through 3 fatalities from gun violence.
Right.
What you have in a weekend in a place like Las Vegas would take Toronto 2 years to get to.
Sure.
And so, you know, it's you know, you have them. If a guy's on top of me beating me with an inch of my life, and I have a gun on my hip,
right,
I'm probably going to use the gun on my hip.
Sure. But it's great. Mike is back with us. This is perfect timing. Mike.
Somebody talking guns. I heard.
We just perfect timing. It wasn't even planned, I promise. But yeah, what a great conversation we're having. I'm so glad you're back.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Continue.
But if either one of us have a gun, there's a good chance we might actually talk our way out of the fight.
Good point.
So that's kind of like the one dynamic, and you can look at the statistics on it. But I studied a phenomenal I did the seminars and I read all his books. Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman.
Oh.
He does on combat, on killing. Mm-hmm. And I did some emailing with him because I attended his seminar, and then I basically turned it into training for our soldiers. And when I started teaching Krav Maga, I pulled out his heart rate chart. And on day one, that's the reading material from my students, right? From his books and from his lessons, right? And you read through some of his stuff and you're like, man, that is some pretty foreign stuff to me.
What was in there for folks that are not familiar with the Krav Maga and our listeners who? Just to touch on that briefly. Book, I'm fascinated by what you're talking about. Yeah.
He's got the first book I read from him was a book called On Killing, like the subject, the psychology of killing in combat or in policing. The second one is called On Combat, which is from the military or the police perspective in terms of what's going to happen to your body in combat. What are the physiological effects of combat on the body?
Mike talks about this in his seminar. Mike does seminars every week about, Second Amendment stuff for U.S. Law Shield. He's a program attorney.
Justified use of force and deadly force. I don't think people realize the physiological effects in the aftermath of a critical incident, and that's why they're so quick to talk to the police and say things that aren't true, because you lose the ability to have those short-term memory things in the aftermath because 70% of the blood's rushing from your frontal cortex. You need those gross motor skills.
Yep. And so when I started teaching Krav Maga, when I started learning it, I noticed that their gun disarming drills were only half complete. So, the instructor, a Canadian instructor without his gun license or gun ownership, he's teaching the disarm, but he doesn't understand the functioning of the gun. So we would, disarm. A great instructor, by the way, like really good. But when it came to the gun stuff, so we got together one day and I said, listen, I got an airsoft gun. It's just airsoft, right? But I bought the airsoft gun just for the action.
Good idea.
When I was training in Florida, they were using movie pistols. So when we're doing all the gun work and the disarming, the guy's actually firing off blank rounds. In the training, right? And I tried to do that in Canada, but it's absolutely illegal and impossible. So I bought an airsoft just
I will
so
come
that
after you for that, I'm sure.
Yeah, the weapon, right? And just action, rack this thing. Well, I was explaining to them that you disarm a pistol from somebody, it's all gross motor. It has to be gross motor, but when you get it, you need to check the weapon, right? Because you now got it, and let's say you're going at the guy yelling at him, okay, get down, get down, get down, get down. Well, what if he brought a toy? What if he brought an airsoft?
You don't know. Yeah.
You don't know. He knows what the gun is. He knows it's an airsoft. He's just going to come charging at you. But the thing is with me, is I had to tell them that, look, if you disarm somebody from a weapon, that's where the first court case ended. The second court case begins when you took possession of the weapon and that person's unarmed. So we don't have stand your ground laws here in this country.
Stand your ground is dramatically misunderstood if you listen to folks in the media. Essentially, what stand your ground does for our listeners is if certain requirements are met, it will get rid of the duty to retreat. In many states, generally, you have the duty to retreat if you can do it with complete safety. And in Pennsylvania, for example, the 3 requirements that must be met to meet stand your ground is, number 1, you got to be attacked in a place where you're legally entitled to be. Can't be in unlawful possession of a firearm, can't be engaged in criminal activity. So you can't be dealing drugs in a crack den in the middle of the night, turn around and shoot somebody and claim stand your ground. I know that's very disappointing for a whole lot of our listeners, right?
Yeah, I need to tell our one listener, Gary.
Second requirement is that you must meet the criteria for the justified use of deadly force in the first place. So you must have a reasonable belief that deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent death, serious bodily injury, kidnapping, or rape, is how it's set out in Pennsylvania. And then the third requirement is the attacker must be using or wielding what is or appears to be a deadly weapon. So if the attacker's got no deadly weapon, then you don't get stand your ground. Under the Pennsylvania criteria. So in the scenario that you just mentioned, stand your ground couldn't even apply.
So I was trying to explain this to a friend of mine the other day, that once you take possession of the weapon, and if it is a live firearm, and you decide to shoot, you're going to have to clearly articulate to the first police officer that shows up why you use deadly force. And you had better hope that just by looking at the person on the ground, that it's kind of obvious why you had to do it, right?
Articulate that through counsel, though. Shut up! Don't make any statements.
That's also what I told him. I said, what you have to do in that case, they have the right to ask you for your identification. Give him your identification, and say, I don't want to say another word till I speak to my lawyer.
Bingo.
And then shut your mouth.
Bingo. You're a smart man, Tom.
And this would be a great time to give a shout out to U.S. Law Shield, which is a membership organization that Mike represents, called U.S. Law Shield, where if something like that happened, you pull out your card, you call the emergency hotline, and Mike answers, and he comes to the scene, and you can even give him the card, and on the back it's going to tell the police officer that you were, being represented, and you're not going to say anything, and then 100% of your legal expenses, both criminally and civilly, will be paid for, and you have one of the top attorneys in the country for that on the show here, Mike, who will take care of you. So I just thought it'd be an opportune time to shout out to our friends there at U.S. Law Shield.
It sounds like we need Canada Law Shield.
You know what? Yeah. Maybe there's something there. Yeah.
But like I don't know what the term is for getting your gun license in the States, but for us, it's like you've got to do a restricted course non-restricted, pass that, and then you can do the restricted. And I did mine back in July. I still haven't got my license in the mail. I don't expect the RCMP is ever going to let me have a license now.
So it's determined by your version of the FBI. And you got to forgive me because I'm not well versed on the gun laws of Canada.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of it's foreign to us. I do practice law in New Jersey, so I'd imagine it's very similar to Canada in that respect.
Actually, Jersey might even be worse, maybe.
But when you say a gun license, you mean the privilege to own a firearm or to carry?
Well, you can't carry one here. There's nowhere in Canada that you have open carry.
Okay.
There is no open carry in Canada.
So when you say get a gun license, you mean just to be
purchase.
able to purchase. Okay.
Like a firearms ID card then, right, Mike?
So New Jersey has a similar system where you have to get a firearms purchaser identification card. That only allows you to purchase a long gun. If you want to purchase a pistol, you have to get a separate pistol purchaser's permit, and they're only good for 90 days for each pistol you want to purchase. In Pennsylvania, where it's true America, if you want to purchase a firearm, you walk into the store, you fill out a form, you submit to the background check, and if it clears, then you leave with your firearm. There's no special license necessary in order to purchase, own, or possess a firearm.
I had to do 2 days of training, write the exams, and then wait for the instructor to send the results to me. And then I had to fill out some other stuff, write a check, send that to the RCMP, which I did last September. And I still haven't received my license in the mail.
So do you see how people can get frustrated with them throwing hurdles in the way for people to lawfully own firearms? Because you were saying the culture is different. So I'd imagine a lot of folks in Canada would say, well, this is all a good thing because we want to make sure that the people who own guns are going to be safe and everything like that. But I don't think they realize that for people who want to be legal gun owners and want nothing more than the opportunity to protect themselves and their family members, you have these hurdles, whether it's financial, like you're talking about, or going through this process. I mean, do you really think that you needed those training and qualifications in order to safely own and possess a firearm, particularly with your background?
Yeah. I mean, I learned stuff just out of like historical sake. I mean, but did I really need to know how to use a musket? Like, really? I paid a lot of money to learn how to use a musket. Like, I'm not gonna ever buy a musket, okay? But I had to do it on the course.
Russ has a bunch of them. He collects them.
Yeah, some do. I would say they're a specialty, but for me, it's not yet illegal to buy an AR-15 in Canada, but the legislation is passing through. So technically, you can't even buy an AR-15 in this country right now. In fact, part of this new legislation that's coming out, you won't even be able to have an airsoft replica of an M4 AR or whatever.
That would be very scary.
Yeah, and it would hurt some feelings.
It might.
But you know, in reality, I wanted, like in our military, we call it the C7. You guys at M4 or M16 or whatever the version. It's the same weapon. It's the same, and we call it a C7. And I wanted two C7s, and I wanted two P390s, the SIGs, because I wanted one for me and one for my wife. The reason being is because my wife's already trained on a C7, right? And now we go to a little bit of muscle memory, and it's not like we want this because we're going to start patrolling our neighborhood with it. Yet. We just don't want it to come to that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? A bag of bees.
Yeah. You don't know about the bag of bees.
Oh, can you cue that up, Russ?
Do we have the bag of bees commercial for Tom? He's unfamiliar.
Yeah, he's got to.
I will be sure to dig that up. We actually have. I don't know where the original is.
Before Tom goes, we'll have to get him the bag of bees. Right. That's going to be a real bestseller over in Canada.
Yeah.
I want to play the burglar one because that
we'll probably send you some free. Actually.
And Tom, when you're talking about her being well trained on that particular firearm, isn't part of it also that if you're going to have the means to protect yourself and your family, wouldn't you want the best tool for the job?
Well, I'm the best tool for the job to protect my family right now. I'm joking because, like I've often joked with her, and I said, "Hey, if I'm going through the apocalypse, I don't want to be going through the apocalypse with any other woman, other than maybe Ronda Rousey or something like that." But I don't see that happening, right?
That's fair.
She's coming on the show next week.
Yeah. But I agree, and the hard part about all this stuff is, you know, because these things aren't cheap now. They've gone through the roof in prices, right? You know, what's the scenario that you decide to choose now? Like, am I going for like a Caltech, or do I want to go to something longer, or do I want to stick with a pistol? Do I want to deal with shotguns? Like, what's the situation that I'm buying this for in my country? I don't really know, because I know from my point of view, if I'm ever in a situation where I have to defend my land, you know, I have a 6-year-old daughter. I'm not getting into a big firefight. It's not going to be an Alamo for me. It's just going to be a delay operation long enough for my family to use their escape route. And that's all it is. It's just going to be fire and movement as I'm withdrawing from the area. I'm not getting into a big firefight with police and neighbors and whoever. I don't know who they are. I'm, you know, as a soldier, you don't train to take your own children into the battle space.
Sure.
But in this particular case, I am. And I'll tell you one other thing, and I've thought long and hard, and I don't know how you'll feel about this, but you know, if we were in a complete SHTF, you know, and let's say some guy or some woman tries to break into my house and suspects that there's food in there. I'm not going to shoot somebody because they're hungry and looking to feed their family. The first thing I'm going to do is in that scenario is always keep a little tiny bag of food by the door. And I'm going to say, take this, your first one's free. Don't ever come back here. If you do, it'll be different. But I'm not going to take the life of somebody who's trying to protect their family or their kids looking for food.
Sure.
But you got to make sure that you don't become like target of opportunity number one.
Right. That could make you vulnerable, right? Because I mean, they pull those kinds of scams all the time where somebody will have like a fake baby in a stroller on the side of the road or something like that. Criminals, they can be really sick with the kinds of things that they do.
I saw something a couple days ago where they were doing, you know, like when the kids come selling the candy at the door for like their football team. Have you, you know, you've probably seen that, you know, it's like a young high school looking student. And then as soon as they open the door, like these 3 hooded guys just ran in the house. That's starting to happen here in the US now. So,
well, that's the issue with the cameras. I'd never get a doorbell camera. Never. because some of the brands, when they first came out, the people were able to hack those doorbell cameras. They see you leaving to go to work or school in the morning. They know the house is now empty.
Oh, interesting.
No kidding.
Yeah. Now there's another thing is a lawyer told me this one time. He said, you know, in your GPS, don't put in like your home address. Don't put in home.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your phone gets stolen, now they know where you live. If they steal it at the mall, they know where you live because you put home on there. They go to your house because you just gave them breadcrumbs right to your door, and they know you're at the mall.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
Home and all of my stuff goes to the Media State Police Barracks.
Yeah.
That's what I've saved as home and all.
Oh,
of my
that's a
stuff.
good idea.
So
That's
Really?
smart.
Do you know, I almost, for
Good
contact tracing, did you guys do contact tracing in the United States?
They were trying to get it started, but it didn't really go over.
You could turn it off, and
They tried.
Most people just turned it off.
you go to a business and they'd ask you for your cell phone number.
They did. They're doing that in Philly. They were scanning people's phones with the QR codes.
So what I was doing is I'd go in and I would do 1-800 what was the number? 222-748 something, and people are like, what's that number? I'm like, that's the number to Crime Stoppers. I haven't done it in a while. But
I'd give them the rejection hotline.
Hotline.
That'd be good too.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. You got Bag of Bees, Russ? Let's show them Bag of Bees.
Yeah, I got that queued up. All right, here we go.
Bag of Bees.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes, there's a burglar in my house.
Sorry, could you please hold for a minute?
No, there's a burglar in my house, and I'm afraid for the well-being of myself and my family. I hear him right outside the door. He's rummaging through all of our stuff. I need somebody here right away.
This is happening now, you're saying?
Right now, there's a burglar in my house.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you noticed the recent things in the news. We're no longer responding to those types of things right now. If you could call back in about a week or so, we'll probably be able to get to you.
What do you mean call back? This is a burglar in my house. What do you mean call you back in a week?
I understand, sir. We have important COVID-related issues to deal with right now. I do apologize for the inconvenience, but we will get back to you at a later date.
You got to be kidding me. I didn't want to do this, but I am going to walk outside my house without wearing a mask.
Oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. You don't have a mask? You don't have masks?
I'm going to walk outside my house without a mask.
All right, hold on a second.
I'm gonna do it.
Come in. What's the address over there? We're gonna get somebody over there probably in the next 30 seconds.
123 Maple Street. 123 Maple Street. I'm walking outside without a mask.
All right, hang on. We have a helicopter on the way.
I am breathing.
All right,
air
Clancy,
outside.
take the boys and surround the house.
Hey, come out! Come out with your hands up.
My hands are up. My hands are up. The burglar's
Cover
inside.
your mouth. Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Stop talking!
I'm getting on the ground. The burglar's inside.
Hands over your face.
The hands are over my face. The burglar's inside.
We're not worried about the burglar. You don't have a mask on. Come with us.
You gotta be kidding me. Boy, could this guy have used a bag of bees. Snowflakington here. Don't forget to get yourself a bag of bees.
Bag of Bees.
Somebody
bag of bees is the weapon of choice for the snowflakes. You just have a bag filled with bees, and you release them when necessary. What do you think of that, Tom?
Yeah, well, I think somebody did a video of something like that I saw the other day, but it was all done in video, where somebody was going to violate the COVID rules and the helicopters and yeah.
Well, we were the originals. That was like 2 weeks into COVID when we made that one.
Yeah,
nice.
That was April 2020, I think.
Yeah, we need to animate that somehow eventually.
Yeah, but you think about it too. We've kind of gone to that extreme, right? There was a guy here, Adamson Barbecue, just outside of Toronto. They sent 70 cops one day. 70 cops.
70.
Because the guy refused to shut his license or his business down. And so they shut him down. He went back the next day, and the police actually went in and changed the locks because he was renting the space. Changed the locks on his business. So he went around to another board, kicked it in, and he opened up his restaurant. 70 cops. They even sent the mounted unit with the horses. right?
Wow.
And then
Not the horses.
They're suing him for the cost of the police officers.
I'm sorry to laugh, but it's just insane. It's insane. How do
Man, getting the horses involved, that's like when your mom
Yep.
says your first and middle name. That you know you're in trouble. You know you done goofed.
A lot of people, though, want to go to court. They want to get into a courtroom because they're saying, all right, this will be my one and only chance to get them to actually produce the evidence that justifies it. We don't ever, all courts right now are done on Zoom. Like you can't get into a Canadian courtroom right now. For 2 years, they've been on Zoom. And so the backlog is so extreme.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay, you give me one of those COVID tickets, I'm going to fight it. Because they want to get into the courtroom and say, all right, show me the justification that you could suspend my charter rights. Show it to me. I want to see the evidence, right? But they don't allow them to get into the court because they know they don't have the evidence.
You have problems with judges being slanted on these types of issues as well?
Yes, absolutely we do. And I'll give you a perfect example. One of our organizers that I worked with in Ottawa, she was the one who set up the original GoFundMe. Tamara Litch, she was arrested the Thursday before the police started the assault. They didn't let her out of jail, right? They didn't let her out of jail. She went for her, in front of the Justice of the Peace, and she said, "No, I'm not abiding by those conditions." So then she went and she got her bail hearing in front of a judge. We found out that judge was a candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada in a previous election. She lost, but she's still a card-carrying member of the Liberal Party. And JT himself went to her riding and did a big dog and pony show with her. And so, the standard is very low in Canada for a judge to recuse themselves from a case. If there's even a perception of a bias, a judge is obligated to remove himself from a case. So in the bail hearing, she was saying things like, you parked your trucks in our city. You did this to our city. And her defense lawyer, who's a criminal lawyer, said, basically called out the judge on it and said, there's a perception of bias here. So this judge said, no, she stays in jail. So they appealed, and on the appeal, they asked for an out-of-town judge. And so they got an out-of-town judge, and he let her out. Right? So we
sounds ridiculous. And
it is.
And, in the States, it would be the considerations for bail. Is the person a flight risk, and are they a danger to the community? Yep. I don't know how either one of them could apply.
And it was something along the lines of conspiracy to commit mischief and mischief. Like those are throwaway charges.
Right.
And it's a joke. And she was in jail for 3 weeks on mischief.
Insane.
Yes.
Incredible.
And so she's out now. She's on all these ridiculous conditions. She's technically not even allowed to talk to me unless in the presence of our lawyer, because we're being sued for $306 million. So by a class action of small businesses in the Ottawa area that decided that the horn honking was outrageous, and they couldn't take it after 4 days, and now we owe them $306 million. And I don't know why.
Don't they get it though?
Come with that figure,
they don't get it. The fact that if they continue to go along to get along, eventually the party's going to be over because they've given the government too much power.
It's amazing to me people can't see it. 2 years into this, they're still defending the government. People need to understand that every mass murder, every mass genocide in the history of mankind was perpetrated by the government of the people that were killed.
Yep.
Well, every last one of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they somehow think that governments would never lie to them.
Yeah, it could never happen here. What are you talking about? Here. It's not going to happen here.
Yeah. Seems to be the same people you talk to, out in the public, and they seem to think the Holocaust didn't exist or something.
Yeah.
Like Whoopi.
Yeah, Whoopi. There you go.
Well, what blows my mind, honestly, is Germany, the steps that Germany had taken.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it was only 75 years ago.
That's right.
Like you forgot already what the stain that you've left on humanity, and now you're just repeating it. It's incredible to me what Germany has done. It's incredible.
People have a very short memory, and I think it's getting shorter and shorter, perhaps in part due to the 24-hour news cycle and social media. You're inundated with so many different things constantly that something that happened a year ago seems like an eternity. Forget something that happened 75 years ago.
Sure.
I mean, that's beyond ancient history.
I did a press conference in Ottawa, and before all the cameras started, I said to everybody in the room, all the media, because I didn't know, the only way I could tell who the mainstream mercenaries were versus the alternative media is the mainstream had masks on and the alternative ones didn't. and I said this statement to everyone. I said, listen to me carefully. In April of 1994, Rwanda erupted into a brutal civil war. And in the first month, 800,000 Rwandans had been murdered. The same month that happened, an unknown figure skater named Nancy Kerrigan took a club across her knee from Tanya Harding's boyfriend and another thug. Right. And the only thing that the mainstream media talked about was Tanya Harding.
Right.
And I said, if you ask me a Tanya Harding question in this press conference, I'm going to call you out on it. And so I did one of the things, but that was before the camera started. And so I get this question all the time. What did you mean that day about Tanya Harding questions? I'm like, I've got people out here literally getting beaten by police at the National War Memorial. Veterans getting beat up. And if you're going to ask me something stupid, like, oh, is BJ Dichter an operative for the Conservative Party? Or what happened to all the crypto? Like, if you ask me something stupid, well, I have cops out there beating the living daylights out of veterans and Canadians, then I'm not going to put up with that stuff. And I had a guy right off he missed the briefing apparently, my intro. Well, first question out of his mouth was something stupid, and I said, "Listen, that's a Tanya Harding question. I warned you. Next question, who else?" And then he was like, "No," like trying to do a follow up, and everybody in the room jumped on him. Right? So
that's great.
I don't have patience for drama when I'm facing real hard facts.
Nobody accused these folks of being the smartest people in the world, though, did they?
No, I don't think anyone ever will.
Yeah. Well, they know what's best for us, though, Mike.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they sure do.
So
everything.
Thank you.
I go crazy when people say, "Well, follow the science." I'm like, okay, let's talk about this for a minute. Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto is one of the top 5 pediatric hospitals in North America. 50 kilometers down the highway is McMaster Children's Hospital. It's another really, really good hospital. So my son was admitted to the hospital over Christmas because of his heart condition. We went to Sick Kids. We were allowed to actually sleep in his room in the ICU with him, unvaccinated.
Oh, wow.
Had I gone 50K down the road to McMaster, I wouldn't have been allowed in the front door. So which science would JT like me to follow? Which science? Somebody joked to me recently and said, if you ask JT, how do we get to the moon? Well, the only way to get there is if we're vaccinated. Right? That's his default answer. You get injected, you can fly through outer space and get to the moon.
Didn't Biden say? I feel like Biden said something like that, didn't he?
Well,
the hurricanes. The best way you could prepare for the upcoming hurricanes is to get vaccinated. He did say. He literally said that.
Well, of course it is. Yeah.
That is hilariously tone deaf of him, but also fairly classic Joe.
Unfortunately, the mainstream media just offers up dementia-friendly questions to him consistently, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know what your Congress is waiting for. Like, he needs to have a cognitive function test. I mean, he's the commander in chief of your armed forces, and he's the only person in the world that has in America with the launch codes.
Right.
Well, Hang on a second.
It's stunning.
Hang on a second, guys. Because if he fails the cognitive test or whatever and has to step down as president, then we're stuck with Kamala. When it comes to the lesser of two, and if Kamala, I don't know, doesn't want the position, then we're stuck with Nancy Pelosi. Or who? What's the other guy? Chuck Schumer.
Nancy Pelosi's paper shedding company.
That's right.
Yeah,
with her misuse of stationery.
You're not really set up. Your bench is not very deep.
No,
that's right.
No. The thing is, would we rather have an idiot who can barely, remember where he is and form a sentence, or would we rather have Kamala who, out of like 20 Democrats, she was the one that people wanted the least? She was the first one to drop out, I'm pretty sure.
We're screwed either way.
People can't even move to Canada anymore, Tom. When
they used to want to go there.
Canada's not an option.
The big thing was, if this guy wins the election, I'm moving to Canada. We can't even say that anymore.
I forget if you were here for that part, but he was saying that everybody in Canada wants to move here now. You might not have been back yet, Mike.
Oh, are we talking about legitimately or?
I'm serious. Like I talk to people every day that are thinking about trying to. Well, the one thing they want to do is fly down to Mexico if they can, and then come across the border as an immigrant. Or as an illegal immigrant, or you know what I mean?
Sure. Well, you'll get a bunch of money and free housing and get to fly wherever you want in the country, and so it's not such a bad,
Yeah.
You know what? I might consider immigrating to the United States.
You should leave and come back, Russ. You'd have a better life.
Yeah. I'll go to Mexico to break it.
They really have to go to the right states, though. I hate to say it.
You do.
But if they want true freedom and they show up in New Jersey, they're going to be like, what the heck is this?
Right. Yeah.
This place is a dump.
I'm looking at Montana. One, it's beautiful, and I hear they got really good train stations.
Yeah.
No, you guys don't get my joke.
No, I don't get Montana.
Watch Yellowstone.
I don't know.
Yellowstone? Oh, okay.
Something about trains.
Yeah.
Montana be a good option. Kansas, Oklahoma.
Watch Oh, you mean talking about Yellowstone Park? The
It's a show, right?
Okay,
show
sorry.
with Kevin Costner.
Yeah, okay, we'll check it out.
Yeah.
The trains,
No, the reference.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's kind of a change of subject. So if you want to finish, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
The Yellowstone. I'm curious about the Canadian healthcare system. I have heard different stories about like you have to wait, like kind of the government can approve different things. Is that true? Like you have to wait for MRIs or things like that? Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear on this show?
We're in the rogue hours.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Because our healthcare system is shit. Now, I want to qualify that though. We don't pay the health insurance premiums like you guys, right? Mm-hmm. But you do have better medicine for those who it's affordable for. But here, we call it hallway medicine because you're out in the hallway on a stretcher and a guy might finally get around to you and come up and do something. And MRIs are a real problem here. Now, I have to be aware of my own thinking here when I talk like this, because you remember that show Extreme Home Makeover, where they basically build a house from scratch in 7 days for families that have lost everything. Well, there was a young girl on there who had open heart surgery, and it cost the family $500,000 to save the daughter's life because they didn't have health insurance. My son has had 2 open heart surgeries, and it didn't cost me anything more than parking. That's $1 million in surgeries had he been in the States and I wasn't insured. Sure. And it was at one of the top 5 children's hospitals in North America.
How's he doing now?
He's good now. He's good now. Like he's almost 16.
Awesome.
And when he gets his license, I'm going to surrender mine. But
that's so cool.
For me to go to the hospital though. Yeah. I haven't gone to a hospital in 2 years because it's like someone's going to try to make me wear a mask. Someone's going to try to shove something up my nose. I'm going to bend over and say, no, I want the rectal option just because it's horrible for you.
That's good.
But the reality is funny. Like, can you trust them? Because I know doctors in this country right now that are saying, I'd rather see you drop dead than treat you if you're not vaccinated. Doctors.
It's crazy.
It's insanity. And by the way, we have the same Hippocratic oath as you guys have. So
yeah, we used to have. Yeah, we both used to have that.
Yeah, and so for run of the mill stuff, it's painful, and people don't want to go there. Now they did something incredible here. For a year and a half, everybody was, all our nurses and doctors were heroes until the jab came out, and a bunch of them said, well, after a couple of months of treating all the vaccine injured people, I don't really want to become one of the patients that I'm treating. So a lot of them said, I'm not going to do that until all the real clinical trials are done. And so they just started firing them all. And now they're advertising for internationally accredited nurses to come to Canada, and they'll replace them. As long as you're jabbed, you can have those nurses' jobs.
Wow.
And the same with the doctors. There was a lady who did a report in the States because she was out front of a hospital, saw this busload of medical people get off the bus, go into the hospital. And so she went up and saw the one lady in the front of the hospital and said, "Who are you guys? What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, they've let go of all their doctors and nurses, so we're here to replace them, and we're from FEMA."
Really?
Yeah. And
FEMA.
so she was like, "FEMA?
That's interesting."
She's like, "Well, where are you from?" She was from a different state.
Wow.
And then he said, "Well, like, are you guys vaccinated?" They're like, "No, we don't have to be."
Of course not.
Right? Which science are we following?
Sure. Well,
political science or medical science?
Yes.
So, it's hypocrisy on a scale that nobody has ever seen in human history before, unfortunately. But that's where we're at. And it's frightening. Our military just kicked out, I think in the last month, they kicked out about 500 soldiers.
Yeah, we had a bunch of SEALs get kicked out.
Yeah,
and stuff.
SEALs.
Yeah.
And those SEALs, because I remember reading that they did launch a court action originally, but I don't know what the outcome of that was. But I mean, when you're taking, special operations guys and the millions and the years of training you've gone through, and you just basically flush that down. The Navy SEALs have only ever badged roughly around 10,000 men.
Yeah, it's one of the
with the Trident.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's it in their entire history.
Yeah, that's quite.
These guys don't grow on trees.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kicking them out because they're not going to fall for the lies of the emergency use authorization, because it violates the laws of informed consent, they have every right to decline that as a citizen as well.
Sure.
But military members, they have this thing called unlimited liability, which is the only profession of any world or any military where you have unlimited liability, where you could be ordered to your certain death, and you have to obey that law in some cases, right? But now you're saying, I'm gonna disrespect the laws surrounding informed consent. I'm gonna violate your body with an unproven medical experiment.
Right.
When people don't realize they are the clinical trial,
sure,
that they didn't sign up for, they were coerced into it. And I've been telling people, most people are not getting the jab because they want to protect themselves from the virus. Most people are getting it to protect themselves from unemployment. That's what they're trying to get inoculated.
Being coerced into it.
Unemployment.
Yeah.
Not a disease that everyone knows that you only have a 0.0003% chance of dying from. So
yeah, it's really amazing what we've seen in the past few years regarding that. And I was just looking at some of the documents that Pfizer was forced to release.
Yeah.
Have you looked at that?
The 9 pages of like 4-point font of adverse reactions, including death.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an expert on the show too, talking about the VAERS database and the data in there. Yeah,
I've been on it myself. Yeah, I went on the VAERS myself and did the searches.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because I don't believe in rumors or I believe in facts. And when I'm not sure, I look for the fact. oftentimes people will say, well, I heard this, that, and other. Well, did you see it happen? No. Well, who told you? I think I read it. Or
Right.
okay, so that's an opinion,
right,
or it's a rumor, but that's not a fact. And I like to confirm things with facts.
Absolutely.
But we don't often do that.
No, not these days.
Not when a social media meme can get your heart rate going and upset you.
You get that dopamine fix real quick. Yeah. It's a very interesting stuff. Yeah.
I feel like I've outworn my welcome here a little.
No.
You could never outweigh.
No.
You do want to be respectful of your time.
No, we normally don't go this. The reason we've gone over is because we're enjoying your company so much. Yeah.
Having a great time.
Yeah.
We should definitely plan on having you back on the program again.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
If you had a good time, I know we had a good time.
Yeah.
Next time, we could do a whole show.
Absolutely.
On Hollywood actors that you think are American.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you give us a preview and give us one that might surprise everybody, and then everybody will tune in for the rest.
Ryan Reynolds.
Huh.
Ryan Gosling. Evangeline Lilly from Lost.
Oh, I loved Lost.
All Canadians?
Evangeline
Canadians,
Lost.
yeah. There's a lot of great Canadian actors. Why is that? Comedians, a lot of comedians.
I don't know. They all leave here and they come to your
Michael
country.
Myers, right?
Mike Myers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keanu Reeves is from Toronto.
Oh, is he? Yeah. I love Keanu Reeves. He's a cool
guy
dude.
too.
And he's legit. He's a real martial artist and all. Yeah.
Liberty?
I think Lagertha from the Viking show is Canadian.
Really? Viking, the blonde-haired lady?
Yes.
Yeah, she went to York, which is where I went. She went to this. She's from Toronto.
Yes. I love her.
There's a bunch of the actors from that are Canadian. What's his name? I've been on his show before as a background guy when I was unemployed.
One of the guy, the wrestler who's on that show, Edge, his real name is Adam Copeland. He's also from Canada.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like if you and I forget them. Yeah, John Candy was Canadian.
John Candy.
Let's Go Brandon might be too.
No, who is Ted Cruz? Ted Cruz was born in Alberta.
Ted Cruz, that's right.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, there's a whole bunch. Well, we always joke Justin Bieber. He's Canadian.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
okay.
He's Canadian.
He's been getting pretty upset with the paparazzi lately. I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are tons of Canadians that are in America as celebrities. The only ones you guys ever remember are Celine Dion and Captain Kirk.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both
Captain Kirk, and he really went up. Well, it's questionable whether or not it was actually space, but he was in orbit recently, which was pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's one thing I have to ask you before you go,
sure.
Especially with your military background and the wealth of topics we've discussed tonight. But are you familiar with what Lou Elizondo has been reporting here in the U.S.? Does that name ring a bell?
The name rings a bell, but I don't know. If you tell me,
he was the former director of the ATIP program, Aerial Threat Identification Program here.
Right.
It has to do with the what the Pentagon released regarding the unidentified flying object phenomenon.
Of course.
Not aliens. Well,
no.
That's why I'm intentionally not saying aliens, because I've never said this. Because I'm wondering if you've heard anything about that in Canada or with your military experience, these anomalies that we're seeing in our restricted space that are capable of going from 80,000 feet down to the ocean, and our top fighter pilots are dogfighting with these things, and they're able to, pull 10,000 Gs, and they're anyway. I don't know what you're hearing in Canada about that topic, or if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm not, but it's strange because a friend of mine sent me about a year ago some information about one of your Navy admirals. What was his name? Was it? It wasn't Winter, an admiral who actually got into a big, massive battle in Antarctica.
That's right. Yes.
And he lost his fleet.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But I listened to the recording of one of his recordings where he was saying he basically was flying in the Arctic where it was minus 70 outside. And all of a sudden he got into this opened area, and the lake that he flew over was not even frozen.
Admiral Byrd.
Byrd,
Admiral
yes,
Byrd,
Admiral Byrd. in
a lot of that stuff has been suppressed here. A lot of people are not familiar with it.
Yeah. So that's a really
interesting that you're aware of that. Yeah, that's a pretty big one. Well, I haven't talked about a lot of the stuff on the show yet, but that's a big one there.
For America, you have to realize you guys are inside a fishbowl, so you don't realize that there's a whole bunch of people outside in the aquarium looking in at you guys, right?
Right.
And every once in a while, some of our Canadian actors jump inside that fishbowl with you. But you guys are the greatest show on earth, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but our football. I played football a lot in my youth and in high school and stuff, and we play 3-down football. You guys have 4-down, and I can tell you from playing both 3 and 4, Canadian football is a better game. But I can't stand to watch Canadian football. I will watch the NFL all day long because it's the greatest. It's just the way you guys present sports. The way you guys do, when you guys do stuff, you go big, right? Thanks, here. Stevie. We're here. It's nothing. We don't make it fun like you guys. We're, unless it's hockey. If it's hockey, it's a different story, right? But the entire world, when American politicians say we're the leaders of the free world, I don't really understand what that means, but I do know that you're the most entertaining country of the entire world, and in good or bad, it doesn't matter. But probably you guys really know. Yeah, you guys really know how to put on a show.
This is a big show, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, but
yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, though. That's an interesting thing to hear from someone, in Canada. That's a pretty cool description of us. Yeah.
Yeah, because I grew up on a border town. I got the Buffalo News at night. I played 4-down football in high school. Cool. The American influence was extreme if you live on an American border.
Right.
Right. And you kind of grow up feeling like, man, I wish I was born on that side. That place is where the fun is, where the best of everything is over there.
Right.
And then as you grow up, you think, maybe that wasn't a fair assessment. Maybe our own education system did such a crappy job of teaching us about ourselves. And then, as time goes over, you get older, you start to think, well, I really need to understand the founding fathers of America. And if you look, there's an awesome Joe Rogan, maybe a 1.5 minute clip where he talks about America being the only successful democracy that has ever actually survived. It's a Joe Rogan clip. It's maybe a minute and a half, and it's just absolutely outstanding. And I couldn't agree with him more. I'm very interested in what your forefathers were thinking, because I think very soon in this country, on a political level, if we're able to actually take back government, not the country, we want to take back government. We need to look at that. We need to look at what people were thinking when your Constitution was
I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Yeah, we're kind of in that similar transitional phase in our history in a way.
Yeah, and honestly, I hate to say it, but you guys have completely strayed off of that path.
Exactly.
That path was meant to outlive the abilities of a corrupt person to derail what you guys have created. But unfortunately, introducing big business and big tech and big everything into politics, it's really derailed what it was intended to be.
Right.
And it's really sad. And I think it is a model. America is a model of democracy. It's just that politics and money got involved and completely shit the bed for the rest of the world, I think.
That's right. Yeah. Greed and corruption and ego and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Including our country.
The whole world, it seems like lately.
Yeah. This is the first time that our country has ever realized how bad our government actually behaves.
Sure.
This is the first time we've ever seen it on this scale. Maybe it wasn't always this bad. Maybe it was just more well hidden.
It was more well hidden, I think.
Yeah. But this guy JT, man, he doesn't care. He just doesn't care what he shows to the public. He's got no interest.
It's now or never, right?
Yeah. So,
Guy, I have a question. Who's worse, JT or JB? Want to trade? Should we trade?
see, we have a Hillary Clinton up here. Her name is Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister.
Okay.
We have sometimes actually Bill
I don't even
by
know
Willie.
how to start unpacking that as to how she's the Hillary Clinton of Canada.
Yeah.
Did she mysteriously delete tens of thousands of emails
with a cloth?
Do people
mother
start to go missing when she doesn't like them? Or?
Maybe Willie will stop by, Ross.
Well,
all of her friends commit suicide.
Yes, she is right now. She's the deputy prime minister, but she's also the minister of finance. She was the lead negotiator between what used to be the old NAFTA, which is now the USMCA, with that Trump had put in. She was Canada's representative. She was our lead negotiator on that deal. And the American counterparts hated her guts. Leitzer, I think, was the American negotiator and just hated her guts. But she's got ties to Ukrainian government or Ukrainian royalty or whatever you want to talk about. She's neck deep in all this stuff. In the involvement of her personal family and her mother's role in drafting the Ukrainian legislation or their version of the Charter of Rights or whatever their version is called. So you wonder why the Canadian government is pushing so hard to get involved in Ukraine. It's because our deputy prime minister's Ukrainian. So yeah.
It's a wild world we're living in right now everywhere.
I know. Maybe they're all just inbred like the royal family.
Well, you just had a question actually from Gary about the royal family, so that's perfect timing.
Okay, so Harry is the ginger, right? He's the one married to Meghan Markle. Yeah. Okay, he's the one I like. He's a veteran. He was an infantry officer the first time he went to either Iraq or Afghanistan, but then the paparazzi announced to the world that he was there.
Yeah. Wasn't he flying helicopters or something?
Well, on his second tour, because the royal family, they have to serve in 3 of the 4 armed services.
Right.
Or 2 of the 4. Anyway, he was a helicopter pilot. I think he was a gunner on an Apache.
Yeah, I think he got in trouble one time because he sort of used the helicopter for almost like a personal thing or something. I forget what it was.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, come on. Wouldn't you?
I would.
That's a big
the only reason he got caught was because he's famous.
Right, exactly.
If it was you or I, it would be like,
sure.
There goes Tom. Just he's buzzing the tower. right. But he was guarded by a couple SAS guys when he was a platoon commander, and then when the media blew the whistle that he was there in theater, they had to pull him out for everyone else's security because he became such a liability. But then he started Invictus. And Invictus is a big thing in his world. Like he's the biggest pusher or like sponsor of Invictus games. And it's like it's almost like the Paralympics, but for wounded veterans.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. And so that's a big thing from him because I think Meghan Markle, like that show that she was on, Suits, was filmed here in Toronto.
Okay.
And he was here for Invictus Games. It was a big thing that we had here in the city of Toronto. It was like the Olympics for Invictus. And that's where they met, was when they were both in Toronto. Because he came and he's the face of Invictus.
Okay.
So him I like. I like him because of his war record and he's the expendable one. So he doesn't have to do all that dog and pony. He doesn't have to live in a world that smells like fresh paint and boot polish. Yeah. He can be a normal person.
Right.
But grandma, I don't know.
I've got before we let you hit the road and we close out, interesting tie-in over here. You're talking about Canadian folks that are well known in the United States. And in the comments over here, it seems they're having a chat about how one of our listeners, CB, got his nickname. And he said it comes from the character Seabass from Dumb and Dumber. I don't know if you remember watching that movie.
Yeah.
And Seabass is played by Cam Neely.
Jim Carrey.
No, Cam Neely.
Cam Neely. Yeah, okay.
Well, Jim Carrey is Canadian too, right?
Yeah.
So and Seabass is played by Cam Neely, who is a hockey player, and he's from Canada originally as well.
Yeah.
Is everybody Philly Chris? Are you Canadian? Is everybody?
I say I grew up in New Hampshire, but actually I was mostly in Sherbrooke, Canada, and I would sneak over the border to
playing 3-down football. Were you?
Exactly. Right.
We'll have to talk more about that next time you're on.
Cool. Yeah. What a great.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah,
is there anything else you want to tell our listeners how they can support you or anything like that?
Oh, and your event tomorrow. You have a big event tomorrow, Saturday.
On Saturday, yeah. On Saturday, we're going to have a huge. It's a worldwide freedom rally, and it's happening all over Europe and Canada. So that's all on Saturday. We've had many of these. I think this is the 7th one around the world where they're having a big freedom rally across the planet. So they'll be all over Europe, and we're having the one here in Canada as well, in Toronto. So Toronto, I think the estimates are expecting to have about 20,000 to show up in Toronto, and it's in a very small space actually.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's going to be a great day for a lot of Canadians again, because I'm going to try to refer to this as Canada Day 5. Because when I was in Ottawa, each weekend was Canada Day 1, Canada Day 2, 3, and 4. This might be Canada Day 5. Yeah. Do I have I'm on Twitter.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Saturday we launch veteransforfreedom.ca, and it'll be like with the 4, veterans number 4 freedom.ca.
Okay. You have a website or anything, or
we will
YouTube?
be launching.
Yeah. Okay,
we'll be launching
awesome.
the site, and we'll probably do some podcasts and stuff like that. And for me, I'm just on Twitter under Tom Marazzo.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is Justin Trudeau Fidel Castro's son? CB wants to know.
He's gotta be.
He's got to be, right?
Gotta be.
He does. I almost asked you that question earlier, but
he's got to be. Somebody did like a forensic study and said, look, even the birth dates and the time of his mother's visit to Cuba, it doesn't add up and stuff. But I don't even care. I don't care.
I'd say yes in the spirit.
Listen, if they expect me to believe that Building 7 came down from airplane fuel, and then Castro is Justin Trudeau.
There you go.
Wow, that is. Let's leave it at that, because that makes for the next episode. Everybody on the planet will tune in. Leaving it at that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom Marazzo. Everybody, show me your support. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank
Stick
you
around
for
we.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was an amazing appearance. Thanks. We'll definitely have you back on soon. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, I cut you off.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay.
No, you're good. You're good. They're gonna cut the outro for the radio airwaves tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Phil Duffy. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.